So I would like to call the meeting to order and document the time as 6:35. And if you would, please join me in the pledge to get the meeting started. Rise if you would, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, and again, welcome. Tori, if I could turn it over to you for our mindfulness. So, for those in the room that can, for those in the room that can work, we're going to do a mindfulness set. The kids in the elementary school go through this on a regular basis, and in honor of that practice, we're going to do that tonight. So if you could help us with some quiet for a few minutes.
All right, so just get comfortable in your seat. And what we do is we take a moment just to sort of take pause from where we've come from and what we're about to engage in, and just take some time to sort of notice what's happening on the inside and just sort of settle in. So you can take a deep breath in and focus, and then take a deep breath out and settle in. You can either close your eyes or find a spot on the floor. And we're just going to breathe together for a moment. So breathe in with awareness and breathe out and just settle in. Breathing in, straighten up. And breathe out, settle in. And as you establish a regular breathing pattern, you can just be aware of the sensations inside your own body and mind. Breathing in, straighten up. Breathing out, settling in. And on your next exhale, you can just bring yourself right back into the room.
Thank you. All right, to the board, any agenda adjustments, changes? All set to go as we are. Okay. Our focus on learning tonight, Sean?
So we have middle high school principal Leon Wheeler and director of English language learning and curriculum Kirsten Colgard, who are going to report on parent involvement in our school district. I think you got to touch the computer first to get the image up. And the piece that I wanted to mention at the outset is that while Leon and Kirsten are going to report out on this, it's always important for all of us, but particularly for the board, to understand the connection of parent involvement to the ends and to our vision, which is represented in this graphic. So the idea that students are going to graduate career and college ready and have productive, healthy, successful lives is dependent upon strong, meaningful, supportive relationships with parents, between the school and parents. So everything that Leon and Kirsten are going to talk about contributes to the end statement and the improvement of all of the work that we're doing to move towards meeting those ends.
Thanks, Sean. So Leon and I were saying right before we started that it's really nice to be talking about parental involvement tonight when we have so many parents here at the board meeting. It's really nice because a lot of the things we've been doing tonight, many of these parents have been involved in, so it's a nice connection.
So I'll get started by saying what we're going to present tonight is not everything that we're doing. It's not all of our thinking. It's highlighting some of the ways that we're working to build stronger parental partnerships throughout our community. And as Sean said, recognizing just exactly how important it is, if our students are going to be successful, that we work together. So I'll start by mentioning just a couple of things that are going on in a community way. The first is that for the last 2 years, we've had a barbecue to start off the school year. It's our welcome back barbecue. We had about 1,000 people come to the barbecue. All of our staff members were present, and it was during our in-service time before the school year began. Supper was provided by the Abbey group. Parents got to meet staff members. They had the opportunity to talk casually with each other, to visit the elementary school, the preschool, the middle and high school. Something else that we did this year for the first time, we had what we call the STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. The STEM Family Fun Night, which was planned by our science teachers. And that was held in the fall. We had about 300 parents come, and that's the picture on the right-hand side. There was a competition that the students had chosen to be in, which was an egg drop competition. And so this lift is about 25 feet in the air. One of our custodians or one of our maintenance people was on the top there, and they were taking the students' eggs and dropping them to see which one would survive. So that was quite a popular activity. Some other things that we do that are engaging the community, we have our performances by the music department at the elementary as well as the middle high school, both in the fall and in the spring. Connected with that in the spring is what we call Spring Into the Arts, which is happening in May. And that's a larger celebration, week-long, with all kinds of art, visual art, performing art as well, that's on display from our school year. In addition to that, connected a little bit to the STEM night, it was the iLab has what they call Share It Nights, when the students invite their families in, invite other members of the community in to share where their learning is with their iLab projects.
So I'm going to take a minute and talk about a couple initiatives that we've had to get parents more involved in school that have been going on for a few years now. PACS is one, that the mission of PACS is, the mission statement is honoring the wisdom and heart of our families and community to inspire student success. The main goal of this organization, which stands for Parents and Community Together with Schools, is to really build relationships among parents and help them get to know each other and work on projects that build the school community. And they've been meeting every 2 months, and some of the projects that they've been doing for the last few years include community reads events, which are focused towards the elementary school. And every few months, we have a guest reader come in for community reads. And the guest reader, there's usually a focus. This month, it's going to be a magician is coming in to read a book about magic. And then there'll be, associated activities with that read aloud. These events have been really successful. We've had a lot of students and parents come in and engage with the community, and it's been really great to see. This year, there's 2 new projects that they're working on. And I know, Tori, I know that you're a part of PACS, so if you have anything to add, please do.
Oh, you're doing great.
But one piece is a storytelling piece that our liaison tool, Narola, has been working on with that group to really get stories out on video about how our families have come to Winooski, because Winooski has a long history of immigration, and a lot of our families have stories to tell about how they wound up arriving in Winooski. So a lot of families from various ethnic backgrounds have come together to share their stories and work on making a video to be able to share that with the community.
And one thing I'll add to that is that the United States has a long history of immigration.
Yeah.
And when we were at our PACS meeting, we all said, okay, so let's remember where our families came from. And all of our families came from somewhere else to this land. So there was a common connection between the fact that our families have come from other places from the beginning of creating the United States. So we wanted to make that connection with all families.
Right. And another project that they're working on for April is a community talent show that's going to involve not just students, but parents and community members. There's going to be auditions held, and then a talent show to show off all the talent that we have in our Winooski community. And I think that's going to be pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to it. So another thing that we've been doing for the last few years to build parental involvement is the Parents as Educational Partners program, PEP. And I know there's a lot of parents here tonight that have participated in PEP. And this year, we've expanded our program a little bit. The first class last year was really meant to help our English language learner parents learn more about the U.S. school system and also learn English at the same time. So they've been able to learn things like how to read the report cards, how to call in to tell when their children are sick, what kinds of questions to ask at parent-teacher conferences, all of those pieces. And this year, there's a second class that we've started, so it's a second cohort of parents going through that class now. This week, we're actually starting another class with the group of parents that took it last year. At the end of last year, they really expressed an interest in going on and really being able to learn how to read and write more efficiently in English. So this second class is working with the class from last year and is really going to focus on building their English literacy skills. So, and that starts tomorrow night. And I know there's a couple of people here that are going to be there, so, and I know they're excited about it. A couple pieces that the PEP teachers have placed into their program is technology integration. They use smartboard lessons for almost every class, and really try and teach the parents how to use the technology. And you know, like all of us, everybody really enjoys using the technology. It's fun to learn a new tool. And then some of the successes that we've found with the PEP program is that the parents who've been through PEP really show more confidence coming into school, to being able to talk with teachers and advocate for their children. 100% of our PEP participants have attended in parent-teacher conferences, some for the first time, and they were able to go in and really ask questions about their students' progress. They're also, it's really helped build that community, which is which is what PACS has also really tried to do. Parents have been able to network with one another to find jobs, to help each other with childcare, and to help each other fill out paperwork and different things. So we're really proud of that program and hope to continue it into the future. And Leon's going to talk about learning wants.
2 years ago, recognizing that we have a number of parents who are coming from places that where they don't understand the school system in America. So we started to have what we called learning walks. So we invited parents to come in, and we gave a walk around the building, introduced parents to key staff members, visited classrooms, saw the different parts of our middle and high school and district office, and had a conversation together. And that continued last year, and it's continuing and expanding this year. So every month we're having a learning walk, and in our learning walks we are now focusing a little bit more. We're expanding them intentionally, having different kinds of focus areas to build, again, more partnerships with parents, to make sure that parents understand that we can be supportive of them and they can work with us and their kids for successful work in our schools. So you can see that September through January was more of an introductory, more introductory kinds of conversations with parents and targeted groups. In March, we're going to have a conversation about graduation requirements. What does it take to graduate? And also questions about transitioning from high school to life after high school, whatever that might be. And so we'll be sending out information to invite parents throughout the community to be a part of that. April is transitioning from the elementary school into the middle school, because that's another big change. And it is. It's tough for kids coming, making that change. And it's, scary for parents as well. So bringing people in for that. And then the last, in May, will be the transition from middle school into high school, another big change time in students' lives. In a parallel way, complementing what we're doing with learning walks, our student assistance program counselor, whose name is Danielle Jatlow, started to organize this year what is being called parent meetup groups. And the parent meetup groups are intended to build a connection and a partnership, to provide an opportunity for parents to talk together about common areas of concern, and to support a healthy growth of their children. Danielle has identified some of the topics. They've had some really rich conversations. They've met twice this year so far. They're meeting again in February. They've had about 27 parents each time, different parents, but it's getting a good response. The first meeting was held here in the library. The second meeting, which was in December, was held at the O'Brien Center. And I think the third meeting coming up in February will probably be here, but Danielle's working on the details. And that is a program that we want to continue offering, because parents often struggle to understand what's really happening with my child. Why are they, struggling, or why are they doing the things they're doing, or I don't know exactly how to connect with them in this. And Danielle provides that opportunity to talk together and bring some resources to support parents and families.
So this year we were able to begin involving ELL families in some new ways. One piece was with the purchase of some translation equipment, which are headsets that enable us to have several interpreters interpreting all at once. So instead of having to have a long delay, if we're doing a group group talk like this, we can have all the languages interpreted at once, and then the parents can listen in on headsets. That's been really helpful, because we have now been able to start doing larger events with a variety of different languages spoken. The event that's up there is, we did an ELL orientation night for parents this fall, and we had 5 different languages spoken, 5 different interpreters, and parents were able to sit wherever they wanted and spread out and listen in on the headsets. And parents were really happy with that we found that to be really effective. We've used it for a variety of other meetings this year, and had really good response. And we're definitely planning on continuing to use it. This weekend, there's a community organization that's asked to use it too, so word is getting out and people are really appreciating it. Another way we're involving ELL families is we hired a new part-time Arabic speaking liaison. On the left there is Abir Al-Zubaydi. She's our new Arabic liaison, and this is her with a group of our high school ELL students right after they had finished. They did presentations on different cultural holidays from around the world and celebrated with by each making a meal from their own respective culture, and it was fantastic food, fantastic presentations. And Abir's been really helpful because she's been able to support students in the classroom as they're learning English, and also communicate with our Arabic speaking families.
Just to briefly note that there are a number of other organizations that serve our school and are connected to our school and community. Dollars for Scholars works very hard to raise funds to give to students when they graduate who are going on to some kind of post-secondary training. They provide quite a few funds. They are always looking for people from the community to support their work and to keep this great opportunity going. Our boosters working with our school as well, and the athletic part especially of our school, and the parent-teacher organization. All of these organizations are working hard to continue to support our efforts as a school community and supplement them. And so I do encourage people to get the word out, keep the word out about how various organizations are supporting the work that we're doing.
some plans that we have for the future to continue to engage parents at the school. The parent meetup that Leanne was talking about, one thing that came out of that this fall was that Danielle said a lot of the parents really wanted to have some, technology classes to really understand what their kids are doing on the computer, just to have a better understanding of how to use the computers, how to use the iPads to support their kids, and also what kind of work they're doing on the computer, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, those kind of things. A lot of questions came up for parents, and as we transitioned from a paper pencil society of that's the way you do your homework to this online version of homework, some parents are really struggling with, I want to help my child, but I don't know how, and I'm not always sure about what they're doing and how to support them best. So we are planning to do technology classes this spring. Our technology integrationist, Drew Blanchard, and our librarian, Laura Abaney, are both going to be helping out with those classes, and we're really excited to be able to offer that to parents. Additionally, we have some more ELL orientation nights planned for ELL parents to continue to familiarize them with the U.S. school system and help them understand, what the high school graduation requirements are and things like that. And in addition, we're always looking for new ways to really involve our parents more in the schools, and we're continually looking for new ideas. So.
I'll just highlight the room that you're in is our renovated library, Learning Commons, and wow, what a fantastic space connected to our iLab right behind the glass there. So we're glad you're able to enjoy this space too. This is part of our creating an environment that's warm and welcoming.
I'm still waiting for the soda fountain to go with the booths in the back, and then I'll be out.
Yeah, we actually
You mean
decided not to go
espresso?
that way.
Coffee stand, no soda.
What?
Jukebox selections.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Juice.
Just a couple of thoughts I had. I mean, the storytelling piece, how families came to Winooski. I for one am certainly looking forward to that. Again, like Tori mentioned, I've heard stories about my family, but it would be real nice to
200 years ago,
understand.
100 years ago? Did you get here? No, just
Probably
kidding.
100. Yeah. The PEP is an incredible program to help bring things in, so that we greatly appreciate that. On the parent meetup, you said you had 27 and then 30 parents. Was it a pretty good mix of parents from the broader? I mean, was it pretty representative?
Yeah, it was fairly representative. There were more of the New American first generation families there, parents, but there were also parents that have been here for generations.
Good.
So there was a mix.
Nice. And without belaboring it too much, I know this place doesn't run well without the Dollars for Scholars, the PTO, and the boosters.
Absolutely.
Hats off to those guys for all the work they do. So,
Yep.
it's good. Anything else? Anybody else?
No, it's a fabulous presentation.
Very good. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank
Greatly
you.
appreciated. We hear it, we see it, but we don't often
Just leave it.
stop and listen, so thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Now we have our public comment period, and tonight we have finally we haven't had public comment in a while, so we greatly appreciate you guys coming. We got Infinite and Mag, and so I think what I'll do, Infinite, is if I can turn it over to you if you want to explain.
Sure.
Top down.
Sure.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and so happy that people came out. I'm gonna lead a discussion about transportation and the demand for it. We've been trying to talk to parents about all types of issues at the school and what's been going on for them, and every time transportation just kept coming up over and over again. And so I just want to express my appreciation to Sean, for addressing it publicly in the newsletter and just sort of creating a space for us to really, dig into, how we can respond to it. And so just to give you a sense of all, the different moving parts, I just want to share an email from Glenn McCrae. He's a professor up at UVM, and he's also, he teaches a capstone course for public administration in the graduate program, and he's also the assistant director of the Transportation Research Center. And so he's going to take one of his classes this spring to address the question, the citywide question in Winooski, what is the demand for additional transit services in Winooski? And so the key stakeholders to engage with his class, to start with, the process of understanding the demand side would be the Winooski School District, Parents and Youth for Change, and CCTA. And so, which would all have its own data. And so the report is going to be produced by the end of April. And so this is basically, you know, these folks are going to share with you the demands from their side. And so that's my piece, and you guys can go ahead.
Well, thank you for the kickoff.
I'm Jennifer. I've lived in Winooski for 12 years. I have 3 of my children that go to this school, and it's just difficult in the wintertime and even in the summertime and the springtime for them to get to school on time, and especially in the winter when it's freezing out. And I live on Elm Street, and there's a lot of people in here that live on Elm Street. And it's like all uphill, and it's cold, and it's, you know, they have a bus, but it's, you know, my understanding is that unless they have a disability and they have a doctor's note, they can't ride the bus. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you.
How long does it take to get from Elm Street to school?
Well, on a good day, probably about
walk.
10, 15 minutes. But in the wintertime, maybe 15 to 20 minutes.
If you're driving.
But if you're walking.
If you can get out there in 20 minutes?
It's cold.
Yeah.
Your kids want to go.
You're walking pretty fast, yeah.
Well, when you don't have a vehicle and you have to do it, yeah, you walk pretty fast.
Yeah. So you're sweating by the time you get here.
Yeah, you're not cold by the time you get here.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I'm Nicole. I'm a JFK mom. And this is Julie.
I'm Julie.
I just want to talk to you guys about some obstacles about getting to school and walking to school. When I was unemployed, I had to sometimes think about how am I going to get bus money so my kid doesn't have to walk to school in the cold. And then if I didn't have enough for both of us to take the bus, I would send him. So kindergarten was stressful. I was nervous about him starting school, but he was riding the bus alone to school to get to school on time. I was worried about him missing breakfast if he was going to be late. And sometimes he wouldn't have his outdoor gear. So it would be hard, you know, wondering if he's going to be warm enough. The morning transition to school would be very stressful because if you missed the bus, you had to walk. Or if you're late, you'd have to get a tardy slip. And if you're late, you can't get breakfast, and that's not a really good start for the day. Also, with walking, the children, they don't really understand at a young age the safety, and that cars are bigger than them, they can be hurt. And even as an adult, I have a hard time crossing a street. Sometimes in Winooski, drivers just drive right past you and they don't stop. And when you're 4 feet tall, walking to school with snowbanks, it's really dangerous, especially with visibility problems. And I've seen like little kids walking to school. I actually, 2 years ago, there was a boy that came up to hear on me, and he was walking, eating a snack on the way home from school. I was walking home with my children, and a car came and went in the crosswalk, and I literally had to shield the child. And I explained to him he has to pay attention. He barely spoke English, but I told him car, hit, out, and he understood, and he said, okay. And I asked him if he was okay, and he kept walking, but he was so scared, he kept looking for cars all the way home when we walked home. And he kept looking back at me and saying, no car, and he said, okay, you're safe. The icy sidewalks, they're maintained most of the time, but when we have a lot of snow in Vermont, it's hard to keep up and you can fall. Also stranger danger. There are some sex offenders in their area, and children have a routine of walking to school. They can become very aware of the child's routine, and that could be a danger. And so basically, we really need help with transportation for our children. And we're a small community with a big heart, and every child deserves to commute to school safely and as stress-free as possible. And then thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Harka Khatka, and I'm also a parent. I'm going to talk about, how this is going to affect the immigrants and new American families, especially. Most new American families, the first thing we want, or we start doing right after we come to this country, is we look for jobs, because that's very, very important. And some of us, get jobs very much close from where we live here, and so we'd still be struggling paying rent and sustaining the family. But we immediately have to think about buying a car for our kids to take them to the school, because it's especially at this time in winter, roads are plowed, the sidewalks are not. And we all know how risky it is to walk on the roads. And so I think some of us must have honked at the people who walk on the roads, because most of us don't even think, or we don't have a tradition of walking on the roads here. But people have to walk on the roads. There is no, because sidewalks are not clear, and there are kids walking on the road with parents and several other kids. So it's dangerous. It's really risky. That's one thing. And for most of us who have come and who have started living in this country are from warmer temperatures, and below zeros are really very torturous. I don't know if we are going to get used to it, and that's really hard for people to walk on the street, and people are not very well prepared according to the weather conditions here. Wearing a coat, a pair of gloves, and shoes is what people think, but we are not prepared. What kind of hat on what kind of temperature, what kind of coat on what level of temperature. So this is, it's all about learning, and it's hard. A lot of people are suffering. And we have been trying to carpool, help each other for families who don't have cars, but this is not looking sustainable, because for my child, in my child's class, it could be a early, late start day, or things that just keep coming up. My child may become sick, and I have to come pick up my child earlier. And the child I'm helping, giving a ride, I would not be able to do that. So this is not looking sustainable. I've been trying to bring other kids to the school as well. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Onesmo. I'm parents, like as they say. My question is, how is the body of school and the body of City Hall, or Winooski, and the body of CCTA, they can help us, or they can help students, because some students, they have no transportation from home to come to school, usually if it's the season of winter. So as the parents they say, I think it is difficult to walking from school to home, from school to, so I think the board, all those three boards, they sit and to discuss how they can to help our children to get ride from maybe other streets, or because some parents they have no car to get reach school. So I think it is a problem as winter season. So it is very, very hard. So I think try to discuss how to help and to get the easy transportation to help our children. Second, I saw these technology classes for parents. Yeah, I think we can need it to help us to teach us the technology for classes for parents. I think it's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Huda.
I am May.
Hi, I'm Fatima. Hi, I'm Krishna. I live in Winooski for the last, I don't even remember, 12 years probably. I have kid who's 5th grader this year. Every year I had I am fortunate to have a car, but the problem is how my work, it used to be at 7 o'clock in the morning. Who's gonna drop my son in the morning? I have someone who's home, but I had to ask my boss that I cannot make it for that time because I need to drop my son, and I have the same problem for picking up. And every morning I do bring him to school. We're trying to help some people if we can, but I'm seeing we are in West Street, in the border between Colchester and Winooski, and from there all up hills. I see the kids who are walking. They are walking, and sometimes when you have big storms, they plow the big streets, but the small streets, they are unplugged. The kids are in the middle of the street. You had to wait for them to pass before they can. And just I don't know, the lady said that she made it for 15 minutes. I don't know how you make it, but it take more than that to in cold weather with those uphills. And something happened this morning. I told my son I'm gonna be late because we have meeting at school, and he told me what the meeting about. I said we're gonna talk about the transportation. He said, yes, Mom. Yesterday you had to put gas and dropped me next to the gas station. It was so cold to work to school. I cannot do that. And that just he does that just once in a while. I had to drop him in the gas station and he walks from there. And he complained of the cold. I don't know how the other kids do it. And especially in this time of year. In the summer, maybe it's fun. They could ride their bicycles, but that's not the case all the time. And all the issues that people talked about, it's really, really big issue. We really ask if you can help us with transportation. And I'm gonna help Mace to say her story.
My husband, his job very early, 4 a.m., 3 a.m. sometime. Huda helped me sometimes, but every morning, but afternoon, sometimes he need still in his work. This is very difficult because I don't have anyone bring my daughter, drop her, but I have a small baby. I cannot walk and bring her. It is very difficult. Before maybe 2 days or 3 days, he has a problem in his job because he need leave his job and bring my daughter. That's very difficult.
Yeah. He was in trouble with his work because he told them I need to pick up my son. They said no, you need to stay at work. And they are new immigrants who just arrived to the country. They have to support their family. She cannot walk with the baby in this freezing temperature. It's really stressful for them.
Hi, I'm Fatima. I live in Winooski 10 years, and I'm a single mother, and I am a full-time student, and it affects me. Bringing my son early in the morning, I have to go to work and drop off my son here, and then I have to catch up my classes. Sometimes I take my son before the students leave, because I have to pick up him and drop the babysitter, and then go to my classes. And there was a complaint from, always pulling out my son before the students go out the classes. But I don't have anybody to support me. And I always wish that we have a transportation that my son goes back to his babysitter. And I can imagine how hard it is being parents who doesn't have cars and new in this country and looking for jobs, and how hard it is when you don't have transportation and your children needs to bring school and pick them up. And sometimes parents, they lose their jobs because they don't have transportation. Kids don't have transportation. and they have to pick up the children. And we know that transportation is basic need, and for school, for everything, but if you don't have transportation, how can you survive? And I'm asking you if the board would do something for the parents who really need transportation.
Okay. First of all, I want to give thanks to you that you give a great chance to come here and at least keep our problem. So my name is Krishna. I live in Winooski. I have been here just 2 years ago, and I think I want to give my example, and I hope that there are so many too many family like having the same problem like me, and I am just a single mom like her, and I have a little son, and I have old father and mother at home, and my father is totally disabled, and my mom is like mentally tortured, and it is very, very difficult for me to run like my life and my son life, and then I have to look my father and mother at home, you know, and sometimes by knowingly I have to lose, or I have to make my son class absent because I have my father appointment in hospital, and my mom appointment at hospital, and because of that I have to miss my class, son class, because I know that it is very important. I should not have to miss the class, but it is my problem, so I have to manage. In one hand I have my study, and in one hand I have my father and mother, and in middle I have my son. So it is very difficult for me to run my house, and I think there are many family having the same problem like me. So if really it is very important, and it is like basic problem to have a transportation system in school. So I hope that you guys are help the family like me who have a very great problem, and they are very needy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
ल म पनि एउटा यस क्वेसन भन्छु साथीभाइ सुन्नु। म चाहिँ अब नेपाली हुँ, नेपाली भएको नाता नेपालीबाट बोल्छु, म अङ्ग्रेजी जान्दिनँ। र यहाँ अहिले विनिस्की स्कुलमा चाहिँ किन यस्तो समस्या पर्यो भन्दा चाहिँ हामीले पहिला 12 मा पनि 2012 मा पनि हामीले बसको कुरा गऱ्यौँ, 13 मा पनि बसकै कुरा गऱ्यौँ, र यो बसको चाहिँ किन स्कुलबाट चाहिँ बसको समस्या हामीले कुरा गर्नु पर्यो भने यो भ्रमणमा चाहिँ साह्रै अप्ठ्यारो समस्या चाहिँ के पर्यो भने हिउँको समस्या पर्यो।
Ram. My name is Ram. We have, like, since I came to Burma in 2012, and then I found that there is no transportation in Winooski. So we raised a voice in 2012, 2013, and 2014. So nobody heard the voice. So still we are having the same problem. We are going through this cold weather. So why not this problem solve? So why are taking longer time? So our family, our children are having a lot of problems.
र यो किन यो हिउँले मात्र नभएर चाहिँ अब हामी अर्को देशदेखि आएको हुँदाखेरि हाम्रोमा गाडी कुदाउने साधन राम्रो छैन। हामी कोही धेरै जसो डिसेबल छौँ, डिसेबल भएको कारणले गर्दा गाडी कुदाउनु हामी जान्दैनौँ, र त्यस्तो मान्छेहरूको चाहिँ नानीहरूलाई बडा समस्या परेको छ। एकदम उनले पढ्न आउँछ तर त्यो बाटोमा तकलिफ भएको कारणले गर्दा स्कुलमा आएर त्यसले पढ्न पनि सक्दैन।
Many of our new immigrants, they are disabled, they are sick, and some are single lady. Our children coming to school, on the way they get sick, and they cannot focus and concentrate in their studies in the school. And also when they come back home, they are really tired, and they are not even able to focus in their studies at home. So if this problem is solved, I think our children also will be able to focus in their studies.
यो चाहिँ म यो कुरालाई चाहिँ म मेरै मात्रै नानीलाई भन्न सक्दिनँ। मैले देखे जति नानीलाई सबैको नानीहरूलाई समस्या यही छ कि स्कुल आउन उनीहरूलाई समस्या परिरहेछ, र विनिस्की स्कुलले कुनै कृपया गरेर कुनै गरेर हामीलाई एउटा गाडीसम्म दिएदेखि बच्चाहरूको लागि चाहिँ गाडीहरू दिएदेखि हाम्रो पनि राम्रो हुन्छ होला भनेर मैले यो बुझेँ।
I know it is not only my problem, it's a problem of the whole community. And then on behalf of all the community, I stand here and I request you all to solve this problem. This is my humble request to everyone present here.
र अब बेसी बोलाउन सकिनँ यति भन्दै मेरालाई चाहिँ कुरो यहीँ टुङ्ग्याउँछु म
Okay, I'm very, very thankful for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Webb. A lot of you know me. I teach here. I'm speaking only as a teacher. I wear a few different hats, but just for myself. And anecdotally, you've heard the most compelling testimony already, I think, but I think it's useful to think about how this looks from inside the building, too. I have not been here as long as Mike DeCaro has been affiliated with this school district, but this is my 6th year, and my classroom was on the 2nd floor, facing this way, facing towards the parking lot. And my first year, I would look out my window at the start of school and think it was like 1895 or something, because there were so many people walking to school, and it was so idyllic in many ways. And the parking lot was not always full. We had the first row of parking lot was for guests, and it was empty. Now I know there have been some changes over time. They put all the parking slots slanted, so we lost some spots, and there's the daycare. But it's become very hard to find a parking space now. And the reason is, I think, because there was this charming idea that this is a walking district, but I actually think that's a myth. This is a driving district for anybody who can drive. And what that does, as we have more and more students driving, it does fill up our parking lot. It also means that the gap in equity has grown for the students, as some of the parents eloquently stated. Those who have cars, those who can arrange a carpool, which can be tricky, versus those who don't. Inside the school, we do see it. When we see the weather's bad, you can hear teachers saying, oh, there's going to be some kids out this morning. And lo and behold, we have some kids who don't make it when it's snowy, really rainy, really cold. Again, this is anecdotal, but we feel that some kids are not there, kids are coming in tardy. We can't teach the kids if they're not here. And if you can find a way to support them getting here, particularly in the coldest months and from those farthest locations. And I have talked to kids who don't walk as fast as some of the moms here, who say that it takes them about 30 or 35 minutes to get here from Elm Street. And that's a heck of a long walk uphill in the snow, and it feels like both ways. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you.
I'm Meg Klein. I'm a community organizer with Parents and Youth for Change, and thanks for everybody for coming out tonight. I'm going to share a couple stories with you of folks that couldn't make it tonight. The first one is the story of a mom of early elementary and preschool children, and her husband leaves earlier than school hours start, so he's not around to be able to help, and they don't own a car. She spoke to me of the difficulty of leaving early in the cold with 2 young children. I mean, we're talking 4 and 5, right? They're not always cooperative. She found it really difficult to manage the steep hill, the snow and the ice, with a stroller, uphill, and a reluctant walker who's jealous of the child that's riding in the stroller. This is not pleasant. She was really stressed, though. I say that with some humor, but it's actually a really painful story. She spent a couple of years doing this, and it was incredibly stressful for her. She felt like they didn't have a good start to the day, right? So every morning she felt bad when she dropped them off, It's sometimes worse than others, depending on how the walk went. She often found herself in the position of keeping both children home if one was sick, out of necessity. She wants her child in school, being taught, learning, but if one kid's really sick and she can't find a ride for the other one, there's really not an option besides leaving them out of school. She wants to do the right things for her children and feels really upset when she can't give them what they need most from school. My second is a letter that this woman wrote. She's really sad she couldn't be here tonight. Dear Winooski school board members, I'm writing to you as a parent of soon-to-be kindergarten student. We are 2 working parent home, and our son is eager to start at JFK Elementary next year. As his parents, we are also excited at the thought of our son being at JFK and all that the public education system in Winooski has to offer our child. However, there is one concern that I have: transportation. Both my husband and I leave for work early in the morning, and neither one of us will be able to drive our son and walk him to school every day, which I understand is required for this age group. This concern has given me sleepless nights as I try to figure out how we're going to make this work. If a bus was available to pick my child up at our house or a location close by, I would be able to get him on the bus before departing for work. I want to be the best parent I can be, and this situation causes me a great deal of stress. As a middle-income family, I don't feel it is fair for our family to have to figure this transportation issue out on our own. My husband and I work hard and are proud to be members of the Winooski community, yet this one issue is frustrating to us. We would like to be able to put our trust in a bus driver who is trained and capable of getting our son and other students safely to school each day. I have never heard of a school district, big or small, requiring families to figure out their own transportation, and I'm curious about the rationale for this. When my son gets a bit older, I fear that he will be encouraged to walk to school. What's a safe age to allow a child to walk almost a mile to school? How do they navigate around neighborhoods where there aren't sidewalks, including our own? What about the times of year when the weather is below freezing, like now? How do I feel about allowing my son to get to school on his own with these concerns? I want to be a good parent, and I want my child to get to school safely. Each day, I worry about how I can do both. In my mind, there's one solution. Winooski should provide transportation options to all students. I hope that you will consider funding for transportation for all families in the near future. I know that I would be more than happy to work with a committee to help figure this out if we know we have your support and financial backing. To me, this is a need that should be prioritized in our community. Thank you for listening. Jennifer Bickle-Hayes, Forestry. And with that, we have an invitation.
I have an invitation for the school board to walk to school with us, starting at the bottom of Winooski. And please remember, at JFK, when the red light's on, that means you can't go outside to play for recess. But when the red light's on, we also have to walk to school. So leave early because the weather might make you late. And please help us have green thoughts on our way to school and help us find transportation. So we ask you to walk with us on the cold day, probably when the snow plows make the piles high for us, to walk to school. And don't forget your mittens. You'll need them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you all for coming. I walked in early, nobody in the building. And when you all came in and they walked in with 8 pizzas, I figured we would be not able to feed everybody. So thank you for coming. I think we've had the discussion, as somebody mentioned before, about transportation. To Harka, where are you? There you are. You don't ever get used to the cold. You just learn to tolerate it. You know the summer is coming at some point. So no matter how long you've been here, you don't get used to it. So, I thank you greatly for coming, and we'll work with the team that is looking at this. Did I hear we were going to have some output from a study committee in April? Is that what I?
Yeah, that'll be a report. There will be a report from the UVM folks in April.
Okay.
And that's a citywide thing. So the school district is just one partner in that.
But it is a subset of that study.
Yes.
And we will be supporting folks that are concerned about this issue to come together and do voting on their own.
Yeah, we'll stay, the administration will stay connected to that work.
Okay.
So then we can stay connected to it.
And then we'll report to you and bring groups back when, when the time is right. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Anything else on public comment?
Is there anybody else that wanted to speak?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. So at this point, I would offer that if you want to leave, now would be a good time. If you want to stay, you're welcome to stay.
Stay.
Come on. All right. So moving right along at this point, if we can move to the consent agenda, I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
I'll have a second.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Accepting the consent agenda as is? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Discussion down into item 6, ends monitoring. So tonight we've got what would be our first discussion on the college readiness interpretation, and as I read down through your, Sean, your monitoring report, it looks like you touched pretty much the whole ends piece, not just the college readiness on the way down through. So, are we good to talk all the way down through, or did you want to focus on the college ready piece of it as we had originally
I think focusing on the college ready. However, what I found when I was doing this, and again, I continue to use some examples out of Essex Town and Orange Southwest, Mark Andrews and Brent Kay, who have done this before, is that when I was kind of pulling apart the end statement, it made sense to me, as you can see, to bold those specific elements and then talk about them in different parts instead of doing the whole thing or breaking it down even finer. So I'd like some feedback, number one, on does it make sense from board perspective that it's broken out that way? Mm-hmm. And then I'm happy to talk about any parts of it. I didn't put as much work into the last couple of elements as I did into the first couple of elements. Mm-hmm. And I think, as we had scheduled on the agenda, it was really to talk about the interpretation for the most part. But I found I was kind of like, I was into it. So I thought, you know what, I'm thinking about the interpretation. It automatically leads me to the indicators. And so I just kept going and thought that I would offer you everything that I had done so far, just so it helps me to see not only the part, but to see the whole at the same time. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, nope. And so I would ask of the board then, as we start to go through these, the college ready being the first piece, when we originally did the ends statement itself, we had a pretty long, lengthy discussion about, do we leave it shallow? Do we get into very great detail? We had examples from around the area of some very elaborate end statements that got down into, section 6, subsection F. Right. So they just kept breaking things out. I think we consciously, on the first pass, decided to leave it at a high level, see how the interpretation came out, and then to have a discussion, does our policy cover what we needed to cover, or do we have to, or should we go and extend and get deeper into it? Mm. So as we go through this discussion, if you can keep in the back of your mind, does the end statement as it stands cover what we think we need, or do we have to get into these next levels? When I read through this weekend and started going through it, I also had the thought that we have to sit here tonight, not tonight, but as we go through the next several meetings, we have to project ourselves into a position where none of us are here. Does this thing live? Mm-hmm. Does this thing drive the school? Does this thing drive still the outcomes? Is it giving the intended purpose 5 years from now that we hoped it had today? Mm-hmm. So I really want to, have that view of how does that look as we go long term, and do we need to expand? So.
And along those lines, one of the things that I kind of ran into when I first started doing this and comparing to others was, we have an end statement. What is the ends policy? Or is the end statement really the ends policy? I mean, and that's what I think you're referring to, that the board kind of struggled with, what's the grain size? Right. And kept the end statement, but is that really the end statement, the policy? Or do you have to go a little bit deeper when you're thinking of, or into more detail when you're thinking about this kind of living on beyond board succession, administrative succession, and so forth? And I don't know what the answer is, but that was just a question that kind of arose for me when I was writing this.
That's confusing. Is there such a thing as an ends policy? Right. Like,
well, if you were to look at some of the other examples, like Essex Town, in their policy they have the equivalent of our GXs and the ed quality standards below there. That is part of their policy.
Uh-huh. The way many of them are set up, the ends isn't an official policy.
Huh. And the difference that makes, if it's an end statement versus a policy, would be what?
So I think the difference would be that if it is a policy, you have much more detailed expectations in you know, standardized test scores will be this and that, and Harry, jump in anytime to the conversation in thoughts. But I think the policy, if it's down into a policy statement, it really gets into a more detailed level to drive the outcomes. The question is, does what Sean has prepared here, I mean, looking down through some of this, you know, you get down into the evidence with the local assessments, state assessments, you get national assessments, standardized.
So is it about sustainability and the difference between a statement and a policy?
It could be. Could be.
Seems to be like also something about flexibility there, right? I mean, the more we prescribe the policy, the less creative you and your staff can be in how to meet those ends, right?
I think that becomes a big part of it too. Do you want to pigeonhole it down into the way we're doing things today, and it dissembles the freedom to go and do something different, which I think we need.
Are there models that have just an end statement without the policy, or vice versa? We are left to the expert. I got the book.
I'm going to default to
policies.
No, I'm happy to chime in. I should at least say,
so
well, I
let me just start at a different place. This is Harry Frank, coming from the VSBA, for those that don't know him. Harry is, last year we had a phone-in and a Montpelier visit for policy governance groups, and I think the travel and the timing didn't work out as well potentially long-term as it could have. So Harry's kind of doing a road show to different places for different discussions to then get back out to the general community for, again, education across all and learning, essentially. So
I think I've met most people, but not everyone. So Julian, Harry, and
nice to meet you, Harry.
Rainbow,
our student
nice
reps.
to meet you. And how do you say your name?
Ladanya.
Nice to meet you. Well, let me just first of all say, I don't think I need to say a lot. The first 4 or 5 minutes there was extraordinary. My interest is in making use of the recording that we're making tonight to provide other boards a window onto this work, because a lot of boards are grappling with the very same questions. I can probably offer a little bit of perspective on some policy governance practices, but I want to preface it by saying policy governance on Vermont school boards exists on a very wide continuum of practice. And so the simple answer to your question is yes, some ends, policies, and statements are one and the same. There isn't a kind of detail underneath it, whether it's called an end statement or an ends policy. I think at the end of the day, the point is where do you want to draw the lines to provide direction, guidance, governance? Because I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all. And I think that's not just Vermont public education. I think that, well, I'll just leave it at that. So, and I'm happy to chime in. And the other thing I'd like to do is, if there are times and places along the way over the next 20, 30, 40 minutes of conversation where I feel like, gosh, could I ask this question that would have you tell more of your story so other people that watch this could get that kind of insight. I hope you'll give me some license to do so, but I certainly don't want to unnecessarily extend your session on this. So thanks for allowing me to join.
Don't hesitate to.
Okay.
And I think the question that we're all kind of grappling with right now is, one model would be to the end statement continues as basically the policy, and then that gives the flexibility, the creativity that you were referring to, Julian, through the interpretation and the indicators. Or do the skills and the knowledge that I've listed really become part of the policy?
Yeah, right, which is where we...
Because within policy governance right now, if you were to accept this interpretation, when I do it again, I could change the skills and the knowledge. And then you could say yes or no again when you read that monitoring report.
Right, but you wouldn't change the GXs because that's the end of a very long process, right? We pretty much got those tiled in. So if you change the skills and knowledge, that would be like the next level under the GXs, right?
Yes, although much of that comes from ed quality standards, which are requirements anyway. There's been some adaptation there, so it's not redundant with some of the GXs.
Yeah.
But
so if we understand that the end statement is basically defining why our organization exists, in what we're producing into the world, for who and at what cost. I'm still confused about the differences between the statement and the policy, because in my mind, it is it is answering those questions that are central to governance and central to running an organization. So when you say drawing those lines, in my mind, I think long term that if this is something that our community helped us shape, and we shaped this policy based on what we felt was best for the students were at the heart of it, the families were at the heart of us and gave us feedback, and then we also were thinking about the organization and sort of our role in it, which is 10,000 feet up. We want it to be as broad as possible. That we want it to sustain itself through transitions. What's going to ensure that, and also knowing that it's still a working document. You know, it's not necessarily in cement, as we say in the South, but it is a working document. So, what is the best avenue for that? From student perspective, family perspective, administration, you know, who's doing that? But I kind of heard you say they're kind of they can be one and the same, since it's unique to whatever organization is doing it.
I think the one piece that ties the two together ends up being the metrics themselves, and what are some of these measurements that we're seeing? Are they getting to showing us, the board and the community, that we are actually exiting students that are in fact college ready? They are in fact college and career ready, depending on the path they choose. And so the skills and knowledge that is listed in here, the critical thinking, physical, social engagement, and learning persistence. You know, how do you show what it is? How do you show how the kids are doing? And it's not just this year, right? It's how do they look next year against this year, and how do they look the year after? Are we getting better? Are kids making a full year's progress? And if they're making a full year's progress in a year, are they actually on grade level? The answer can be no, right? I got a fourth grader who's made a year of progress, went from second to third. But how do we give the intervention to then move them the other half? That's the action plan that comes behind it. Is we're showing the growth, but they're not in a position. Then how do we show that we're actually moving that next step? Summer intervention, after school.
So this interpretation, this document, can stand the test of time, you know, in terms of interpretation and measurements. Boards after us would have to go through a process to reshift this if they felt that needed to happen. And again, I'm thinking again of sustainability, that this interpretation and the way that you laid out how to measure what we felt our community was asking for when our kids walk away from this organization represents where we are right now with our families and our community and what we feel is best for students. And so this document can stand the test of time too. They would need to bring it up. I guess I'm thinking like, so it would be on the annual list for monitoring, so it would have to be brought back up to get more community feedback. It felt like it needed to change.
And so one of the thoughts that went through my mind is, if we were to break this down and take our statement and put a bunch of subsections in it, and one of them was, say, in the area of math, kids will be proficient in algebra. And we go, and this is going to be a really wild example, but 5 years from now, the laws of algebra no longer exist. Right? And so all of a sudden your policy needs to change. Rather than maybe having Sean or the leadership team say, you know, this is no longer valid, so in our interpretation, math is now this.
Well,
rather than
so
changing the policy. Otherwise, if you got it in a policy, they're going to march down that path because you told them that's where you want them to go.
Whether algebra is relevant or not anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so outdated.
Well,
It's so
but policies don't need to drill down that deep, guys, in my eyes.
This isn't a policy statement.
Right? Well, either one, I don't think, people think policies have to be this very regimented thing. And in policy governance, from everything that I understand about it, it's very broad and very high level. And honestly, I think that's what this end statement is.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to just put policy on that, leave it that broad, and then the interpretation is always open for, number one, the board has the final say, but number two, it's a reasonable person test. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I would be, other than one or two things I think should be probably added to the interpretation, whether I don't know whether they've been missed or we weren't focusing there, I'd be ready to approve this right now as far as a policy and a superintendent's interpretation. I think this is fantastic. You know, he's come up with everything that meets the requirements in the broad policy.
Yeah.
You know, we've said this is what we want, and then we're telling him, you prove it, and the interpretation's on Sean. That's really not the board's work.
Right.
So for the policy to start to really drill down to that level, do we need to here with an interpretation like this? I don't feel we do.
So can I ask a clarifying question? Do we
Sure.
feel that if we change the statement into a policy, we would have to drill down to that level?
No,
No, I don't think there's a difference.
I don't think there's a difference. I don't, and quite frankly, it probably should be a policy just for the simple fact of it's a policy is a very clear statement of what the board believes, and it's not a vision statement or something's not going to confuse it. It gives it more teeth, as it were. And I think the board, at least I hope I'm interpreting this board, that we want this end statement to be our heartbeat or our driving force in the school district of this is where we're headed and this is where we're going. And then how we get there is his problem.
Right.
Good luck with that, Sean.
Right, fun.
Yeah, so Tori, I think maybe the thing that you're asking is, I personally think that the ends statement, whether you call it an end statement or an ends policy, the way we've got it written, I think it's a tomato or a tomato.
Yeah,
I'm not really convinced that there's really a, if we call it a policy, we wouldn't change it.
Then why aren't all my other policy statements?
They are
And
all.
I'm just playing, the devil's
So-
advocate. This
so
word
I
because the
agree,
word, so we
yeah.
just change it at the top of the thing.
But the other ones are all written in the negative. This is what we want, except you can't do this, this, and this.
Well, it's interesting because
Right.
on the monitoring report it says policy 1.0 ends.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it is policy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
So what's the count?
I think we just it's a policy. I don't think it has to be all that broad.
Okay, so getting over that hurdle then, the interpretation would be the next thing that we're here for that, is do we believe Sean's interpretation captures the essence, and I'll keep it right now, I think, to college and career ready, rather than the stuff at the bottom, because I think I understood you, Sean, say that it's your thoughts on paper, but not necessarily complete.
Right.
So if we were to take up the discussion of, is this interpretation of the college and career ready piece something that we would be willing to accept, pending obviously the documentation or the proof of where are we, which is, the last piece of it. Jay, you mentioned a couple of items that, did it fit in the college and career ready piece?
Well, as far as, no, it didn't, so I'll leave that, but there's one thing I just want to shoot in at the end, and it's small, but I think it's important. But under college and career ready, guys, if he's gonna meet all of these data points, and you're gonna have to train everybody with data too, so we understand it. But I think that's part of it too.
You mean the board?
The board,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the organization
And the
within,
organization.
right.
That's
Yes.
right. So all the data thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this is really only like a page here. This is big.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is a huge amount. So people don't misunderstand what exactly he's going over here. I mean, the evidence he presents, if he's going to do that and explain it both internally to the staff, explain it to the board, explain it to the public, guys, I'm good. And I'm the tough one of the group. If there was a problem, you would know.
You're not so tough, Jay.
Well, and I think one of the things to understand is there's you know, like in evidence, all those different assessments, you wouldn't be getting a 400-page report once a year with all
Thank
those.
goodness.
Right.
There would be an assessment plan that would be multi-year, because we also don't want to go do to our kids what we always talk about
Right.
everybody else doing, testing them and testing and testing them. But we do want to have more faith in our local assessment ability around our GXs and other things that we're doing. And then have a sensible report system that happens over the course of a few years to measure progress, growth.
The only question I have, and this might be blanket for the whole policy, but I'll apply it to college and career ready, and I'll just throw it out there, but policy governance generally is my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of a binary equation. You're either meeting a standard or you're not. And I see this as more of a growth model. You know, we're here and we want to go here, and then we want to go here. And as we're viewing data and assessments and all that, that we're growing towards that, towards meeting the ends. I mean, we're not going to come out of the gate and say we're going to have 100% compliance on all of this.
Well, you know, I was going to ask that. Actually, that was my next question. Is we really don't set a baseline here or a goal. We just say, you know, the pie in the sky is here, but we haven't said, you know, this year we'll make it this far, next year we'll make it that far. At what stage does that start to happen?
Well, you got to have data first. Right? So until you get that first data point, actually until you get the second or third data point, you really don't know what it is you're trying to influence. Right? And then after that, I think then the interpretations come, do we interject an improvement?
But okay, so that's fair.
Do we?
And from a policy standpoint, like who sets that? Do we set that? Does Sean propose it to us in an interpretation? You know, X improvement over this many years, that kind of thing. Or?
I would think, you know, first year's data. You know, normally in policy governance they tell you keep looking forward and don't look back so much. But that first year's data really is something that once you get it set of this is exactly what we're going to be looking at over the next few years, then after that, that is what you look back on. Okay, that's where we were, and moving forward, are we continually growing on that, or?
But who says how much we need to be growing?
Well, and how much and all that, that's interesting too. That's a good question.
Well, that is because we were talking about a year's growth, right? Like a year's growth model. I don't know, but that's not in here in terms of measuring student progress based on the years.
Right, but it is data. It's data that's in there that's available. So I mean, I think we're focusing on what are we getting out of the district. Ultimately, when you say college ready, you don't have that data until the kid is done college. Right. So if we're sending kids out of here and they're going to college, and everybody we send out of here goes to one semester and is done,
That's data.
whatever we're looking at ain't good enough. If everybody that leaves here finishes, maybe we're being too hard.
Is that what we mean by college ready?
Or what are colleges telling us?
Well, they came to our meeting and told us.
You know, well, but they're also, you know, they can provide data to us saying, you know, students we're getting in math and science are taking a lot of remedial classes. They're not strong enough in those areas, and that's information Sean can use
to feed back
into the system. Correct.
And from alumni.
Yeah.
You know, how were you prepared in these specific areas?
Right, so sort of self-reporting stuff and then third-party reporting stuff.
Right. And then are the measurements that we're actually getting good enough? Does it make sense?
Well, and then this too has evidence would be postgraduate data, which in some ways, some of that information is while they're there.
Well, sure, yeah.
You know, sort of those, you know,
I don't think there's any
remedial classes. Just again, it's like a snapshot of how are they performing.
No. Staying in touch with people doesn't seem to be a hard thing these days, according to my son and daughter. You can stay in touch with anybody anytime you want.
24/7.
So you just got to figure out how to do that.
Can I ask Sean a question? You said something like, when I got into this, I really got into it, and I found I was connecting, you know, looking for indicators to align with different pieces, I'm assuming. I mean, I'm asking this genuinely out of curiosity, but I think it would be very interesting, I hope for you all and also for others. Could you just narrate your journey a little bit more in detail, and maybe it's around a specific area or more generally? But I just think that would be a helpful way to look at this document and make sense of it.
So I started with, okay, I'm just going to look at college ready, and then when I put that together and I went back to my notes in the minutes from our college and career readiness forums, most of it was the same. What people talked about. So initially then I was immediately like, well, I should combine those into the first interpretation. And then I have a strong belief about the blending of skills and knowledge. And we have a very clear path in terms of skills, transferable skills, which is the GXs, which is great. It's gone through a wonderful process to get there. Then we also have some very clear direction through the EDGE quality standards. So it made sense to me to put those together as the skills and knowledge that will prepare students. That's kind of generally accepted wisdom, I'd say, these days around what's going to prepare students for college and career. But when I looked at the Ed quality standards at the bottom of page 1, I also noticed that there was a lot of redundancy between the GXs. So for instance, in the Ed quality standards, the first item is literacy. And it says it includes critical thinking, speaking, listening, writing. Those are almost all in our GXs, except for what was blatantly missing to me was reading. You know, which you can't do all those other things unless you can read, and so it's very implied these days, I guess. But I felt like it needed to be there, so I created the reading and included the 3 essential components of reading. I modified mathematical content and practice to include algebra and geometry by graduation instead of by grade 10, as the quality standards state. I added financial literacy to global citizenship because I think that is very important, and we also have some pieces in place, although not required, that I think are pretty successful. And then the Ed quality standards have a last one, G, called transferable skills, which again was a lot of the GX stuff: communication, collaboration, technology, problem solving. So that's how I got there. And then when I got into the evidence, this was really, the evidence is kind of just throwing mud on the wall and just throwing everything out there, because that's a lot of data points right there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work to be done on the GX assessments, and not just at the high school, but all the way down through pre-K-12, because we need to give students the opportunity to have instruction, practice, get feedback, and then more formally assess them on those. And that needs to happen at all levels, but we're not necessarily going to report out on it there's not going to be a GX report for every single grade level.
Yeah.
So that's where at that point I said, well, I'm really supposed to be focused on the interpretation, so I'm gonna just throw stuff in the evidence so that you understand I'm thinking about it, and we do have some data points that we can grab, and there are others that we're developing at the moment, and others that haven't even started to be developed but will be. Then I went to number 2, and I was like, oh, that's pretty easy.
Budget.
You know, I mean, number 2 is cost supported by majority. The interpretation is passage of the budget, and the evidence is that it gets passed. Doesn't mean it needs to get passed on the first vote. I didn't interpret it that way, just that we have the funds in place and that the community supports it. And then 3, healthy and productive. In the interpretation there, I was thinking a lot, this really relates to, if you think of that inverted triangle graphic that I showed before, this really speaks to the wellness piece at the bottom and how foundational that is, and we've talked about this. The mindfulness, the movement, the co-curricular activities, the food security piece that's really moving, how that is really, really important for everything else. And that, so that's what I was really thinking about in number 3.
You know, I was a little surprised that you put, what did you call it, artistic expression in college and career ready rather than in healthy, productive, successful lives. Was that a decision point, or did you just sort of throw that in there as you were going through?
I didn't really think about that. Now that you bring it up, but I left it artistic expression because it's part of the quality standards. So I just kind of kept those together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it didn't occur to me actually to move it.
I could go either way. I mean, I was glad to see it one way or the other. I would have guessed in 3, but it's great that it's part of the standards. Having said that, there's not really an assessment for that, right? It's just,
For artistic expression?
Yeah.
I think that would, come via the PLP. It would come via exhibitions and roundtables and
Right. So more sort of event-focused stuff,
Right.
which is not exactly. I mean, it's evidence, but it's not assessment, right? Which is fine, by the way.
Well, you can still assess. I mean, it's like the senior project. We do. It's a presentation, but we assess the student on speaking skills, on research, on presentation skills. Eye contact, gesture. These kinds of things. So I think you could still do it with artistic expression.
All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
what we're supposed to do.
That's what we're here for.
Let's see. And then, frankly, I started to lose a little bit of steam.
Right.
Getting down to the last one, local and global community, and
I notice you left a hanging bullet there.
Yeah.
To show that more can.
That's where the steam came.
Well, and one of the things that I was thinking about that was, as evidence tonight, we have this global community right in our little city, right?
Yeah.
And so, what does that really mean to us?
Right.
Does it mean that we need to really work at accessing that for all of our students here, and/or finding ways for our students to access global communities in different ways as well. Whether it's through travel, educational experiences, or virtual global experiences. What does that look like?
I think the short answer is it's all of that. It ends up being a little bit of all of it, depending on what the students decide to go.
Right. I think the local engagement with the local is a lot easier to get your arms around.
Oh, sure.
And I immediately think about all the things that have been happening in the last couple of years with the food drive and the pumpkin carving and the penguin plunge and all the great stuff.
Yeah.
That our students have really engaged with the community.
Super local.
Yeah.
And great. I don't know, LaDanya and Rainbow, do you guys have any opinions on linking the local to the global, and any guidance for Sean as he thinks through that one?
For any of this,
Yeah, any of it for sure. But since that one is where we ran out of steam.
Well, I did have some thoughts on number 1 about college and career readiness. Honestly, from a student standpoint, I believe that these are great graduation expectations. Because if a student were to graduate Winooski with all of these expectations met, I believe that they could succeed in college, and that's what I believe college ready is. When they're prepared in college, that means that they're able to work through and be persistent about it and not drop out as soon as possible, and be able to run through and survive as soon as you get out there. Because it's a scary world outside of high school and outside of college. So basically preparing for college and preparing for the end of high school is doing that and doing all of this. And so if you were to graduate high school with proficiency in up to geometry, say, compared to a student who graduated with proficiency in calculus, they'd both be similar because their graduation expectations here, they both met it, whether or not they are proficient in a certain subject. And I feel like the student all around, compared to their specific skills on the subjects, like what the expectations were before, just focused on core curriculum and having a certain amount of credits, that this changes that and really makes it more broad. So,
well said.
Do you think it's reasonable to expect that a student having gone through the system pre-K-12 would be able to meet high expectations around all of these listed items, the skills and the knowledge?
For now, it's because it's such a new system to me as well as a sophomore in high school, and it's new to me. I feel like if you start early and slowly work your way through it, that by the time you graduate, all of these will have met, and you'll understand it yourself that you are proficient in each one of these. It's just a matter of, my question is, how are you going to track the progress? That's all question I have.
Well, with the changes with the graduation expectations, there's also changes going on into school and the way the students are learning. So, like with the iLab, that helps a lot with critical thinking and problem solving because it's all on your own. So you have to start doing things on your own.
And I think that's a good point, because the graduation expectations make you think that this is something we got to give to sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Right, right.
You got to start the day they walk in.
Yeah, I agree.
The little guy in the front door, you got to start that. And I think to your point, Rainbow, that's exactly it. It's the cumulative effect of getting this over 13, 14, 15 years now, with starting at 3. You know, that's.
And how K through 5 was singing about persistence
Right.
for like 2 months before that performance. It was fabulous.
It's true.
It is. I hear it from my elementary school daughters, the language around these graduation expectations. Yeah, it's in the air.
It's in the air.
In the fabric, woven into the fabric, right?
Hey, does the detail of the graduate expectation on cross-cultural understanding and community engagement inform the global and local connection at all?
Yes. I can't recite it, but yes.
I mean, there's something in there because
Yeah.
we've done some thinking as a community around that one, right? That might help.
Yes, there's kind of like some sub-bullets to that one that will give us guidance. There's not a tight rubric for it yet,
Right.
like there is for oral and written communication. Yeah. And the idea, the plan right now is we have 2 this year, we have 2 a year that we're going to kind of ramp on.
Yeah.
Two GXs.
GXs that
right.
you're
So
gonna
they're really focused this year on the critical thinking and the effective oral and written communication. And then next year it's going to be the well-being, and I'm not sure whether it's going to be persistence or engagement and learning. They're actually thinking about shifting that to creativity because they're finding that they're missing that, and the engagement and learning they're learning is. They don't think it fits as a GX. It's kind of a byproduct. That if kids are doing this
Right.
work and they're getting choice in how they're doing it, that there will be engagement.
Okay, so you're taking the GXs, developing the rubric, 1 or 2 a year to get a foundation that gets cascaded down through the entire system, and then on to another
Yes,
one.
but the focus with those 2 this year is really at the high school and less so at the middle school, but at the middle school, it is pretty surface in the elementary right now.
But at least there's something there.
Yes.
Or there's at least something that says this is ultimately where we're going, and how
Right.
does it cascade
And
down?
what happens is as the high school kind of defines what is the standard, then that's something that we can give the rest of the organization, and they can say, okay, well, here's what's appropriate for an 8-year-old, for a 10-year-old, and then build their instruction around that.
So how is the board going to monitor this work? I think you've mentioned this a couple times, maybe most of you said something about we're focusing on 2 areas a year, and that's aligned with assessment point. I mean, what's the plan for this leadership body to follow along the progress?
My sense of what the plan is that we need to get the interpretations in place first. We're really in the beginning stages of building a data system, so it's going to take us a year or 2 to get good data out that is really going to be usable. So I think in that time period, the board and I would be working on to make sure that we get the interpretation the way that we want it in all the elements of the ends, and coming to some agreement around what the indicators are, and then building that into the data system, and then year, whatever it looks like, 3, 4, 5, is starting to bring some of those outcomes back. and see where we are. And then I would see the monitoring report shifting in year 4, 5, 6, 7 or so to the evidence having specific outcomes. So that's where once you get that baseline data that says 40% of our students are meeting standards according to our reading assessments, that the next year we say, I recommend to the board, and they can agree or not, that 60% of our kids are going to read it based on these same measurements. So I think we tighten up those indicators as we move along in the process, and we get better data to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was just curious how you were thinking about it. Yes. And so that takes me back to the first statement that says we've got to think about this thing that says somebody's sitting here 5 years from now, and it may not be any of us. Is this thing still moving, and are we getting out of it what we really want? And so the data doesn't come in a day. You can get data today, but you're probably not going to be able to do much with it until you start. Is this real? Does this make sense? And can we influence it? Just because you can gather data doesn't mean it's something useful. So
we've been trying to gather data in this district for a long time, and it just, no one has seemed to be able to do it, Sean, and do it well.
We took that step last year to get that started.
Yeah, it just, it needs to be done, and it needs to be reliable, it needs to be multiple measures. You know, and then from there, you'll really get a good picture. And not just for us, but I think for the staff as well. It's going to really help them.
And for the community to show exactly what's going on in this place, that it is not failing, it is living, it is thriving, and it's you know, it's winning. So,
and most importantly, to meet our kids where they are, and then give them those next sets of instructions so that they can grow. Because we know with our complex population that many of our students are not going to be on grade level or meeting standards when we give this assessment, but we need to face up to what is in front of us and what they need and give it to them.
Agreed.
So we've been jumping around this document.
Yep.
Can we go to a spot that I think was missed?
Certainly can do that.
The very first line, all students will graduate from the Winooski School District, college and career ready. And we jump to college and career ready. And I guess I feel to be an accurate interpretation that there needs to be something about graduation or completion. Whatever it is, and I'm not hung up on cohorts, guys, that, you know, students have to be out of here in 4 years of high school or any of that, but I think there needs to be, number one, an interpretation on what that means to you, and then number two, metrics of saying, this is how we're going to measure this, because I guess my thought is whether it be a diploma for a traditional student, whether it be a certificate of completion for a special education student, that all of the rest of this really is of no effect unless a child completes the course of study here. And I feel there should be a section in there about this with an interpretation, you know, and embolden it just like you did the rest. I love how you did that too. And you took each section and said, this is what I'm talking about. This is how I interpret it, and this is how I'm going to measure it. I was cheering. I think this is a wonderful document. I was like, yeah, he's got it all. You know, he hit all of it. That was the only thing that I felt I feel it needs to be measured at some point, and I feel that it needs to be interpreted of what exactly we mean. That the children need to complete.
I guess I have to agree with you. I remember when we went through and put the statement in place, we said students will graduate, and you came in and said we need to have some definition of who and how many and when or what, and so we came down to all students will graduate. So I guess I agree that we definitely should incorporate that into whether it's graduation rates, and it may not necessarily be from and we'll let you do the interpretation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if it isn't 100% of the kids that come through the door graduate, that's failure. That may not be the case, right? It could be 60 this year going to or based on these conditions,
Yeah.
kids that have been with us in second grade,
And I think
whatever.
Sean is,
So-
I think our superintendent is with enough to understand, you know, the difference between a cohort and an event completion rate, the difference between the different types of completions, transient populations and what those mean to us. And I think all of that can be nicely packaged where the board can understand that.
So my question would be whether, because my assumption in this was that all students are going to graduate. What I think that I missed, now that I hear you say that, is something in the evidence, which I would look at, you know, probably 4 through 8 year graduation rates or something like that, you know, because we are encouraging kids, and when we have a proficiency-based system, it's going to, you know, it's going to be different amounts of times that students will be ready to demonstrate that they've met the standards. So I think, so I guess my question to the whole board would be, do you believe that there should be something specific in the interpretation about graduation and or in the evidence?
I'm thinking evidence, because for me, reading the interpretation, I think it stands. I think it captures it.
The graduation rates are a culmination of everything else that you've done above?
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
So would you restrict that, or would you restrict Sean just to a traditional diploma, and things that may be different than a traditional diploma, like a special education certificate of completion?
Well, we're moving to a proficiency-based system. So
Right.
my interpretation of this, and I guess my assumption is this, that we as a board wholeheartedly support the work of proficiency-based, moving towards a
Right.
proficiency-based system,
But-
which is also
But
where
I
our
think
state
there's
is telling us.
there's different levels that children are gonna reach to complete school.
I think that's, in my interpretation, or my understanding of proficiency-based education is you're proficient, meeting you where you are, students at the center. So my interpretation is that it wouldn't be, I also don't think that we would give, even if, put proficiency-based aside, is to say it has to be this type of piece of paper. I think that's a means thing. So graduating means that based on the evidence that they have shown their level of skill and knowledge, years growth, that sort of measurement in here in the evidences.
I think the other thing to consider is what does the board's graduation policy look like right now?
Right.
And what does it say about special education? What does statutes say about that? And because there's going to have to be some modification of our graduation policy to allow for proficiencies.
Yeah.
Take the board out of it for a minute and put yourself as a member of the public reading this, who is not bludgeoned by babble every month. Would it be helpful to members of the reading public, the general public, Joe Average, if you will, to understand with an interpretation exactly what that first line means? Because if you tell somebody they're going to graduate, we got a basketball game going on. If I go down there and I pull 5 people out of the crowd and I say, all students will graduate from Winooski, what does that mean to you? A large portion of them are probably going to say, well, they're going to get a diploma. And that's not necessarily, I don't know if that's what we're actually talking about here. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't care, but I think there should be a measurement involved.
Well,
I'm more hung up on that than I am the interpretation, I guess.
What does graduate mean and what does all mean? I mean, those are 2 words that we're focused on here, right? Does all mean 100%? Is it a goal or is it an actual
aspiration?
Is it aspirational,
Yeah,
or is
we
it?
could always ask the legislature, because Act 44 says by 2020 they're trying to get 100% of students to graduate in the state of Vermont. So, I don't know how
So
they're
that's
interpreting
all.
it either, but
No Child Left Behind failed too, but that's okay.
I will just say that I'm more hung up on the measurement than I am on the interpretation, but an interpretation might be helpful if people had questions about what exactly that meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm leaning towards seeing that as evidence, because I think that's an outcome of the whole system after all the rest of this stuff has gone through. Whether it's 100% or whether, I mean, we've struggled with a 4-year graduation rate. Having 85% retention rates beyond that is a positive.
Yeah, I think that
you know,
means
so
nothing
you know, where does it actually end up over time, and can we show that as being, if we can show that we're going from a 40% graduation, I'm pulling out a number because I don't remember exactly, but if we can show that we're moving from 40 to 45 to 50 over 3 to 5 years, 6 years, and we're showing some other improvements that we know we're tinkering with the knob and saying we know what this is, we're getting kids engaged, we're getting them healthy, the wellness is good, we're feeding them so that their food security is working, and look, the outcome is such that this is working. So I don't know that it's necessarily another level in the interpretation as much as it is an outcome of the other evidence that we've got. Would be my, but you know, an evidence, a data point.
I'm good with that. I'm more.
You know, a data point in the evidence might be something that we want to, you know, look for.
I think that's right. I mean, I'd be curious to know, right? How long does it take? What percentage finish? Yeah. When we say graduate, how many diplomas are we talking about? How many?
And I tell you, in 10 years on this board, guys, if the students are still here, as far as I'm concerned, all bets are off. If they're here and they're slugging it out, and it takes them a little longer to graduate, you know what?
Yeah. Well,
that's,
you know what
that's good for everybody.
What it doesn't say here is all students will graduate within 4 years from the Winooski.
Right. Very specifically stayed away from
and
that.
it's not, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was just looking for the graduation policy, which I can't find
I
on
don't
here.
know.
But I also think about it in terms of us supporting this move towards proficiency-based education and how that would shift it anyway, because I would assume, if I could find it, that it would have a lot about Carnegie units.
It does, but it does give some flexibility for proficiencies right now. It says, I don't remember this, but it says or.
And what that type of policy, you know, a new graduation policy would look like.
Yeah.
So
looking forward.
sounds like we may want to drag that one under the scope here in the next couple of months and take a peek at it, right?
It's going to turn into a very big deal, I think. You're going to find across the state, the graduation thing. They're going to start pushing that.
Yeah. Oh, I suspect that Nicole will eventually be working on a model policy for most based on statute and proficiencies in the upcoming year or so to share.
I'll mention that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, Jay. I think that's a useful part there. And
other than that, I thought this, I'm going to call it a policy. I found this policy and the interpretation, the entire thing from top to bottom, Sean, it's
pretty clean.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, very, very well done. So I think we actually had as an item to, so this would be the same as all our other interpretations, right? We're giving you a little bit of feedback on evidence and your
the same cycle, a month of discussion, then I would bring it back, but this is not a monitoring, this is not a full monitoring report yet because there isn't compliance, there's no evidence, there's nothing to be in compliance with, really. So I think next month it would just be a matter of accepting the interpretation and moving forward. And so I guess my question would be, do you want me to bring all elements, you know, the 4 back so that you could approve all 4 interpretations, or do you want to continue to have a separate time to discuss each one?
I'm going to throw my piece out. We invited in the college groups, UVM, CCV, Champlain, for college-ready discussion. We invited in the soap factory here, Twincraft,
Yep.
the
Spherion.
Spherion.
UVM Medical Center.
The
Right.
UVM now Medical Center in on a career ready. What does it mean to be career ready? We haven't really touched these other ones yet. I guess I would recommend that we wait until we do those to finish that
Yeah.
particular interpretation.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd rather not
That's a good idea.
I'd rather not put this in place fast.
Yep.
I want to do it
Let's do it
thoughtfully,
right.
do
Yeah,
it-
yeah,
do
yeah.
it well.
I agree with that.
Great.
So we'll concentrate on the first piece that we've done. Thank you for at least flowing down while you were in a groove to the other sections, and it at least gives you, the ability to start from someplace already.
I actually think we're probably good on 1 and 2, right? I mean,
I think the support, I think that's pretty straightforward. We're not gonna have a forum on that one.
yeah, let's
So,
not have,
Well, we will soon when we
Yeah.
present the
Sure
budget.
will. March, whatever, we're getting a big forum.
yeah, that's coming up soon. We gotta get to that before we're here all night, for sure. But I think the rest of the agenda here after the budget will be another discussion, and we've already had that one several times. But
Okay.
so, Harry, with that,
Thanks.
I think we
Thank
close
you.
this section down.
Yeah, and just so you know, I will include a link to this video to the network of boards that are policy governance boards, and encourage them to view it. I'm hoping I can attach your report. I can follow up with you about
Yep.
what you're
Please.
having there. And of course, this happens on a couple times a month, so I try to keep Sean and Mike informed as I travel, and I hope and trust you'll make use of those sessions and other materials. So, thanks for giving me the time to join you.
Thanks, Harry.
We'll also open up that if there are any questions from anybody that watches it and has any questions, don't hesitate to either send email or call. Phone numbers on the
Okay.
website.
Yeah, I'm always
So,
encouraging people, so.
No
Thanks.
problem with that.
Good.
Great.
All right, well, I will take my leave, and you have a good rest of your evening.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So from there, then we go into Section 7, Executive Limitations, and the Financial Conditions Activities. And our action tonight is to look at approving the FY14 audit report. With us tonight, we have Sheila, and I am coming up completely blank, Sheila, on the last
Valley.
name. Sorry.
Valley.
Valley. So, never mind. I had to humbly request but thank you. So, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and I'd also like to welcome Rebecca Goulet, Finance Manager, who is also here, and thank both of you for your stamina.
Yes.
And being that it's 8:30 now, and
Right, bring a chair.
it's
Just
been
getting
very
warmed up.
interesting, but thanks for sticking with us. And Sheila's gonna walk you through some of the important pieces of the audit. This is your new auditor, and as I'm sure Rebecca would reflect to you, it has been a great process. We have tightened up a lot of things. The timeline has gotten much quicker and more efficient, and Sheila and her team, working with Rebecca, have done a fantastic job, and we're really, really happy with the work so far. So,
Well,
thank you.
I'm sure everyone has received a copy of this audit. What I'd like to go through is kind of like a quick little synopsis, which is basically the first few pages, and then there's what's called an MD&A, which is what the school district is supposed to kind of come up with an overview of how the year went. And then behind that is just the audit numbers that kind of support everything. So the first part of our audit, which is our independent auditor's report, just states that the audit was in accordance to government auditing standards. You had to have a single audit because your federal dollars are over $500,000, and that the audit opinion is an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can have. So everyone kind of always wants to know, well, did we pass the audit? Well, you passed the audit. Did very well. Proficient. The MD&A, kind of like the financial highlights, are kind of the key areas for this year. On page 3 of the audit, it kind of gives a summary of what your, it's kind of a little different. In a governmental audit, there's kind of two sets of books. You have entity-wide, which is where you include your fixed assets, all your buildings, your land, equipment, and then you have your debt, which you don't have much of, but that's included on there. So that's kind of one set of books. So we call that the government entity-wide. Then you have the fund financials, which are what you're used to looking at. You have your budget to actual reports of the general fund, and you have also the grant funds, and then you have the hot lunch fund, and then you have your capital projects fund. So it's kind of two sets of books. So this is just kind of giving a summary of the whole entity and then each fund separately. So the first part is your net position actually decreased by $248,080. In here, it will give the differences of why that's different from funds. It includes your depreciation, it includes capital assets, and the payment of your debt. So those are kind of like the changes. The key part that you would be most concerned with is always your general fund, and it's the budget to actual. This year you budgeted not using any prior fund balance. You had a zero-based budget, of which you were $167,736 to the good. You approved to use $100,000 of that to go through your fiscal year 15 budget, which you've done, and then you're going to transfer some money to the capital projects fund, about $68,000. So again, that's very good. You ended up better. And your fund balance for the general fund, I don't consider to be an excessive number. Based on your overall budget, it's a little over, I don't know, you're probably your 15-16 budget, you're going to be about 1% that you have left over. So not a large amount. And we see that amount ranging from 1 to 5% of the budget being left over. Okay. So I'd say you're on the low side. Okay.
Which is always the better side to be on. You don't want to be on the other one.
Taxpayers would say yes. But again, you have to be able to not give everything away. You can very easily be in a big deficit situation, and then you have to go to taxpayers and ask for additional money, which is not. You try to be steady, and I think most people be happy with that. I can go through the whole audit, but I was kind of going through the summary. Do people have actual questions?
I just had one that was specific, and Rebecca, you might be able to answer this. But on page 29, I noticed that we're carrying, it seems to be, and I don't know if I'm correct in this, but it seems like we're carrying a lot of Medicaid money. And I know there are definitely restrictions that's generated by Robin's crew over there. And there are restrictions on how it can be spent, but we're up near $500,000, and I guess what are our thoughts on that, on those finances? Are we planning on doing anything with that money, or?
So we've been using some of that over the years, as some of the other federal funds have dried up. We're using it more for increased social working, so we paid for part of that out of there. We needed to increase some of our paraprofessional time, so we've used that. So you are starting to see that balance will start going down, not terribly fast. It's kind of a nice rainy day fund when we have these special needs that come in.
Right.
But we are cognizant of that, and we are trying to use that in other ways to free up money in the general fund, but we have to be careful not to supplant and to also follow the guidelines, because every year we have to report back to them how we spent them and how it's tied to our action plan.
Okay.
So we're trying to have a very close balancing act, but we're aware of the money there, and we do try to use it when it's allowable.
Okay.
And we also have been really fortunate the last few years, since we've had some staffing changes, that the Medicaid revenue is increasing. We had tighten up some measures there, so our revenue is higher as well.
Oh, good. Studies. Excellent. The only other thing that I saw, and the board had a conversation once upon a time about special education and hedging our bets with special education. And I'd just like to point out in this audit that we were over close to $200,000 in tuition for special education, and we were able to cover that by doing a little bit of a dance, I noticed, which is fine, but just a word to the wise in future budgets, you know, should that conversation resurface about doing things with special ed, it only takes a couple of students and you're in very deep trouble. You know, putting yourselves in the red, and we've come close in past years, so as I go out to sea, guys, just bear that in mind.
Yeah. You're saying we spent 200,000 more than we had intended, and we covered it up with other.
186, 184.
But also recognizing you get percentages
Oh, yeah.
back of
Yep.
that 200,000 on the revenue side,
Mhm.
at depending on the per kid at 50 or 100, you know, 40% to 90%.
We did have some kids that were over the 50,000 threshold, so then you get 90% back, so that does help cushion that a little bit, but there's always that fear that you're gonna run short, and that's why we do the monthly projections, so that if we need to pull money or, you know, shut down other areas to compensate in places, so we do the monthly reports, John and I talk about that, so we can get on top of that.
And I think Jay's comment is aimed at, to get to, I think, your original question, I think Jay's comment is aimed at when we go through and start setting the budget, they'll go through in like early October and set the special ed budget based on who we have here that day, that time.
Right.
When you put the budget together for the following year, you could potentially lean into the wind a little bit and say that's kind of high. We haven't seen it that high, and cut it down on the hopes that you're going to take care of it. And I think Jay's comment or warning is be careful of, exactly, you're throwing the dice, you be careful what you do. So.
That's good. Good words to the wise.
The only other thing that I saw is there was something in there about month-to-month reconciliations.
Oh.
And is that going to be implemented?
Yeah, the interfund balance.
The interfund balance. Yes.
That was my. Can you just briefly explain that?
Yeah. Basically, I mean, there's a lot. You have a lot of little funds, a lot of these little grant funds, and just basically what happened, and a lot of it had to do with the timing of the prior audits, and that they were done so late into the next following year that the entries were not given to Rebecca in the year that they should have been, so you're kind of like, you're behind, and so therefore these due to, due froms were not reconciled. So when we got here, we resolved that. There's reports that can be run each month to make sure that those stay in balance. So it's timing. Now they have, this is the first time in many years that you actually have in a fully adjusted numbers that match 100% to this audit. You've never had that. You've always had played catch up and had adjustments to your fund balance number. You never had you couldn't go this year, last year in your system and get accurate information. This is the first time. When we left, she had those numbers.
We spent a lot of time reconciling the old audit methods
back to this.
So we agree on everything when they left the office.
So at the end of September, she had the exact real numbers. And so when you do this year's budget, you actually have very good comparisons. You can actually look at and know exactly where you're spending your money.
Okay, so the month-to-month reconciliation is at the end of each month or shortly into the following month, reconciling backwards, so you're always, okay. And this, you set up a system that doesn't cause you to fall off your chair once a month and trying to get it done.
Well, she doesn't have to guess what went into what year.
Yeah, okay, all right, nice.
So that's one of the improvements that Sean was talking about when you were saying you tightened some stuff up?
Yep.
Yeah, and what else?
It was really just...
Well, the main thing is just dealing with the timeliness of the audit and making sure that your information, your systems had all the adjustments in the right year. When you're dealing with 6 or 7 months after the year end and you're not hitting the right accounts, it's very hard to even budget because you didn't have history. So it was pretty much just timing, making sure we got the audit done, as quick as we could and got information so that when the budget was happening that you had accurate information. So just having that done, I mean, Rebecca's been reconciling. It wasn't like anything wasn't, cash was reconciled, everything was reconciled. It's hard when the opening numbers were not matching.
Yeah.
So by moving the audit up to having them here in September, made the flow this fall a lot easier in our office, because when they left at the end of September, we knew what the fund balance was. So there was just minor, conversations that tweaked the audit. So when we started the budget process in October, we weren't worried about the following year, because generally what's happened in the past is in December, we're doing the audit and we're presenting a budget. So you're working across 2 and 3, sometimes 4 years. Whereas this time it was much easier because we were done with fiscal year 14 before we started thinking about fiscal year 16. So the process has made it a lot easier, a lot more streamlined.
And then we actually came in and met and reviewed the audit, and I don't think that we've had a chance to do that. So, I mean, it's been,
With the treasurer as well.
right, the treasurer came in, and so I think it went very well.
Okay.
And we kind of changed a little bit, some of the audits, made it a little bit, I think, easier to read and follow, so.
Yeah, it was.
We hope.
Yeah.
But we've already talked about booking our dates for the next
year.
audit, so we've got her on the calendar, so we're ahead of the
Any
game.
areas of concern, Shelley? Anything you're walking out recommending for us?
The main thing is the reconciliations, making sure that the due-tos, due-froms reconcile. The other suggestion was the timing of when payroll taxes get paid. They were actually being paid a little bit ahead of time, and we feel to get you through the summer, you don't have to do that, and it would make the cash less, because I know this year there was some issues with that.
Without a tan.
I was going to say, it just goes back
right.
to the tan
Yep.
too, right?
Yep.
So those are the main issues, and we're already starting in for this year to get together and make sure that the things are reconciled, and everything's, she's actually been sending me stuff right along. So I think all in all, it's actually gone very well.
Great.
We're pleased.
We talked as you came in, and I'm wondering if we could rehash the conversation about the reserve fund balance, its size, its use. Every year we come up with a small surplus. We've been for the last couple of years putting a piece of it back into next year's budget and stocking a piece back over into the reserve fund. The question always comes up: you're storing a lot of dollars there. Is it a lot of dollars? And from a financial perspective, is your thoughts?
Well, just to arbitrarily do it is not a reason to do it. So I would assume that you have a plan, a capital plan, or you have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan of what your needs are. And once you develop that, that gives you the ability to say, okay, and I think there was talks about something's gonna have to be done, that you might have to go out for a $2 million bond. Well, if you've already accumulated some of this money and you don't have to go for a $2 million bond, then it just helps to be able to borrow less. So I think it's fiscally responsible if you do have a year in which you did do well. I mean, you had an approved budget. If you spent within that budget and had leftover and put it into that reserve, it's gonna help in the future so you don't have to raise taxes or borrow money that you don't need to borrow. So I think it's fine as long as you have a plan where those dollars are gonna be spent in the future. Just to throw money into it, no. But if you have a plan, by all means.
So when we do our budget presentation, we definitely want to have the summary page on that plan that Jay and the crew did with the facilities group. And so we can lay that out. That'll be good evidence. Thank you for the.
No problem.
It helps us make the comments and understand better. So appreciate it. Anything else?
I move we approve the audit.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the audit as is? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. And Sheila, thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you very
Appreciate the
much.
work.
Thank you.
Rebecca, as always, thank you.
Thanks.
We do miss you, by the way, for coming every month with us, but
I think we'll stay through the budget part.
Sean's been taking good care of us,
I know
so
he is.
we're good.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Night, Sheila, thanks.
Look forward to seeing you again. All right, so continuing on, item B is an action where adoption of the 15-16 budget. Have the data in 7B laid out by program, function. This is from a high level The spending increase, I think we're at, correct me here, Sean, is 4.49
Yep.
on the spending side. And I think with regards to, we had talked about carrying moving 100,000 from the 14 fund balance into this budget to absorb some of it. And that'll carry the other 68,000 into a article in March to put that balance into the reserve fund. I think the equalized pupils is set. That won't change at 925. 03, yes. The base education rate, I think at this point, is subject to potential change depending on the legislative session and any outcomes. The base homestead rate is increased by 2 cents based on the state's guidance to make sure that we go. Our CLA moved down from 101, I don't have it in front of me, but it was 101 point something, to 98.34, which is, the CLA is a huge piece of the overall financing calculation for the, it is a measure of how home prices in Winooski are selling compared to their appraised value. I believe it's appraised value. And assessed value, sorry, yep. And this tells me with this going down that houses in Winooski are selling for more than the assessed value of the sample that they took. So it goes down, which has an inverse relationship to the school tax rate. Because when we originally did these assumptions, this 4.29, so the overall percentage increase is 4.29%.
The expense is 4.49. The estimated tax impact is 4.29.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we originally did this with the CLA at 101, that number would have been down in the 2.25 range. So it had a pretty significant impact, the CLA. Now, it's a good thing for the city. Rates, housing prices up, taxes based on assessed value better, and there's other positives in the city, right? So I mean, that's,
we starting to get moving away from our assessment when the assessment was done in Winooski.
Yes.
And so as that goes, you're going to see the CLA continue to drop. When I got on this board, the CLA was at 79.
and then we reassessed.
And then we reassessed
and
and it
comes
went
back
way up.
to-
It went up to like 105. 107.
So that's pretty much where we have been, where we have come from. I don't know, any comments, any more, or any further questions before we?
So we would go out and ask for a 4.2 increase?
4.29.
Okay.
Estimated tax impact.
Estimated tax increase.
Right,
And it's,
estimated tax increase.
The expense is a little more than 4.49. Yeah.
And I know I missed a lot of these, but I saw somewhere in there you guys had built in some scenarios about using different amounts of capital fund to mitigate more or less, that right?
Yeah, this one incorporates 100,000 of the
Oh, it's
excess
already in
from
there.
last year.
Fund
Yeah.
balance.
Fund balance.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And we did a view at one point of 125,000, and it wasn't a lot of,
Percentage points?
it wasn't a big difference.
Last year we asked for 6 or 9 or 7.
We went out at 9 originally, and then the 7 cents that the state tacked on ended up down around 5, if I remember right. So we ended up at
about 6 1/4 on the expense side, which was a tax impact. It ended up either in the low 9s or high 8s because there was an adjustment at the end in the spring.
Right, so it was
more
almost
or
twice
less-
as.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but it was more or less what we said would happen. I mean, there's some changes that all sort of washed out at the end, right? Didn't
We were a
ask for-
little lower than we had.
A little lower than,
A little bit lower. And this is half of that. close to inflation. Right?
And things are relatively stable inside from, I mean, when you look at the budget, it's nearly totally wrapped up in salaries and benefits.
The increases.
It's, I mean, that's
Right.
typically where majority of it sits.
Right, right,
So-
right.
And then there's a pretty good chunk in preschool.
Yeah.
You know, which is showing up on the expense side. We're also getting some revenue, and that's why the equalized pupil count is a bit higher.
Yeah.
You know, but we're investing in that programming.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So as opposed to a lot of other areas in the state, over the last 5 years, I don't believe our equalized pupil rate has dropped significantly. From the measurements I've seen.
We had 1 year where we dropped, but
Yeah, because it was up, I think, 4 years ago at like 920 around, you know, and then it went down into 880 or
90.
something, and then
Now it's back to 920
Yeah.
again, 925.
Mhm.
So, I guess that just tells me that from ratio standpoint, student to teacher, it hasn't, it's
It's
not,
steady.
you know, radically going down because of students dropping.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yes, we are unique in a lot of ways, aren't we?
yeah, but I think that you know, gets at the heart of it is
Right.
it's not a student as a student, right? We looked
No,
at,
right.
and Julian, I'm not sure how much you had caught, but we had looked at the special ed. I think the number of kids in the special ed has been pretty much constant over the last 4 years, but the severity of the issues that we're dealing with is moving into the higher, I don't know what kind of a category we had, but it's moving into the more intensive
Yeah.
category. So you
Mhm.
can see that growing and the other one's
Cost
dropping.
driven.
The total is about the same, but it's definitely getting into a deeper needs,
Huh.
which is now staffing, probably
Right.
getting into more mandatory one-on-ones situations.
the
Yeah.
needs are increasing,
yeah.
the services that the children need.
So,
Is that
I
true
move-
everywhere?
Oh,
Is that true everywhere, that the needs are getting deeper for the special ed kids, or is that another unique characteristic of ours?
Anecdotally, yes. I don't know. I'm not sure that there's. You probably could find the data. I haven't seen it, but just anecdotally talking to Robin and she talking to her colleagues and other special ed directors, yes.
Hmm.
You know, and some of that has to do with I think increased rates of identification of students on the autism spectrum and.
Right.
And also, we've seen a spike in poverty in Vermont in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
which is contributes to a higher rate of identification.
Hmm.
all right.
I
So,
move we adopt the 2015-2016 school district budget.
Second.
any other discussion? I would all those in favor of accepting the budget? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Carried. All right. The budget warnings then, action for adoption of the budget warnings. I had one question here. Trying to remember where I am here, sorry.
I'm gonna make a motion while you find it.
Go ahead, yep.
I move we
Jay's
adopt
hungry.
the 2015-2016 budget warnings.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Give me one moment, please. I know I've got it here. We did include the warnings here, right?
They're on page 7 of 7B.
Okay. 7B. Thought I just went to the bottom of that. Okay.
So there is, because there is no new ballot items from year to year, this is really just a copy and paste of budget numbers, both the federal and the operating budget.
So I guess my question was on Article 4, as written, says, shall the Winooski School District number 17 allocate its current fund balance without effect upon the district tax levy as follows: assign 100,000 of the current fund balance as revenue into the operating budget. I didn't understand exactly. It says without effect upon the district tax levy.
Yeah, that is crazy confusing.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's going to have an impact. It's
Yeah.
bringing the burden on the city down.
I remember standing in the poll going,
Well, you know, but you get people in there. You get people in there with the ballot.
Yeah.
You close it off.
Right.
I don't understand this.
Yeah.
No.
That's
But I don't.
interesting.
I'm just not sure what that means.
Article 4, the way
It's Article 6, actually.
6.
Yeah.
That's why I was confused.
So
And
can
it's
we help
just-
with the interpretation, like layman's term, you know, at forums, to be able to pre-warn people how it's gonna be
We're
worded? so
gonna
that
have 30 people there. And we're gonna have 800 vote. We're not gonna
Well,
get
I just,
to.
in some ways, like, I don't know if we're gonna do the
should
home-to-home
do the
thing of
flyers,
just being
yeah.
able, because I think it's true, like, even those of us that, you know, think about this a lot, because I go in there and read it, like, wait.
makes my head hurt.
It just
Yeah.
did, I'm like, wait, what was I thinking before I
just-
walked in this thing?
Yeah.
So I think just helping each other out with that language, because it is awkward,
Yeah.
no matter how long you've been.
You know, as soon as you get any lawyers in there, never mind.
Right.
I'm gonna get
Well,
myself in
we
trouble.
did get
but-
this language from, we had council look at it last year, this is what
Yep.
we were recommended to put
Okay.
in there. We
Can-
can certainly get that.
Get it
interpretation.
Can you at least, so we can, I'm okay with adopting, but I would like to be able to send out something enough to say, this is what this really means.
Yep.
So if you can get me a layman's interpretation, which we really should have in these things in the first place, and I
Right.
understand you gotta have.
Well, the problem is you're being asked two questions at the same time.
Right.
You know, like that's what makes you crazy about it. Can we put it in the capital fund and not affect the tax rate? So, well, can we put it in the capital fund and affect the tax rate, or can we not put it? You know.
Right.
So if we can simplify it and not make it
But
sort
I
of.
think the word is out enough to the voters that they understand what's happening here.
I would not assume that.
I wouldn't either, because
would
I go in
have a
every
hard
time and I'm
time.
like, wait,
One of the reasons, and I was talking with Sheila about this earlier, that we try to keep it a little vague, is that if for some reason, like, we know we have $167,000, we don't put that number in there, because if, say, special ed or something came up this year that we couldn't, we were overspent, that $67,000 is still in the general
Available.
fund for this year, and that could help us with any deficit. So by
Right.
just saying,
But that's not the problem. It's not about the amount. It's about that
Wording.
like attached clause, that second clause there, which is
Yeah.
confusing.
Right.
You know, so if you read again there.
It says allocate its current fund balance without effect upon the district tax levy.
Right.
As follows.
And that without, I mean, that second clause, this is, I
Right.
guess what it's saying is, if we put this in the fund, your tax rate won't change, right? But it kind of makes it sound like if we don't put it in the fund, your tax rate will change.
Exactly. That's the way I tried to reconcile it in my head when I read it.
So why don't, I would suggest Rebecca and I will take this article, we'll get it rerun by council to make sure, and we'll check other neighboring similar like districts and see what their warnings look like to make sure. If there's any substantive change, I would communicate with the board about that.
Let me ask you one step further, though. I would like to have an interpretation to me, or us, that explains what that means to a fourth grader.
we should give it to the fourth graders to go.
Right.
Tell us what
And I don't think it's an
think-
unreasonable request.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think so either, and I think it would be helpful for the budget. I heard somebody talk about the budget flyer over here that, you know, I'd
Yep.
like for us to do again.
Yes.
And we could put those interpretations in
Exactly.
there and make it a much
Exactly.
simpler. So say, okay, here's Article
Okay.
6, this is what it really means.
Yes.
When you vote yes or when you
Right.
vote no.
Right.
So on the table, I have a
It'd be fun to give it 50.
motion and a second to adopt the budget warnings. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, thank you. review the annual report to the voters. This one here, the annual report was a 2013 report.
So
that
yeah,
was
in
here,
your
right?
packet you have last year's annual report,
Mhm.
and that's just for the board to look at, and if you have recommendations around changes. The report itself, by statute, you're required to have all of the elements that are in this in there. So the things that will change is just the updating of the numbers. We have obviously the new audit, so those docs will look a little bit different. We will have some new photographs, and we will have a new piece from Mike, and
I will-
update all the other information.
I will spin the letter that I'm going to put out to you guys individually for input and check. So just so they can get some more grammar checks than anything else. Tori's grammar service. All right.
And we do need to turn that around pretty quickly with the printers, because it has to be out. So Sandy's going to be asking me tomorrow morning for everything. She's already been working on updating the stuff that she can.
Okay. So what are we discussing or reviewing here? Any changes to that? I'll have my piece soon. Okay. Onward then to the student report. Thank you guys for your patience tonight. Appreciate it.
Alright, so of course the students are now back from break, and this week is exam week, and we have
Welcome back.
we're pretty stressed about it, and you know, testing, lots of testing.
It happens.
Part of
Testing
school
happens.
life. Over in the elementary, 5th graders have begun Starbase, which is a program in which they go to Starbase, a center, I believe, in
Air
Essex.
National Guard.
By the National Guard,
Yeah.
I know that. And it's a program where they learn about, say, science and astronomy, physics, and all those kind of things based on the 5th grade system. If you'd like to see pictures, it's on the school's Twitter. On the student council, we don't have much going on right now, but we are working on trying to get a winter ball / a sweetheart dance for the 1st or 2nd weekend of February. There's also a Boston council going on, like I said in previous reports. There is a team run under Courtney Pocket, the business teacher, to go to Boston. We are learning to fundraise, make money, and also learn about the different systems going on with businesses and around the area. There are 30 students going, including myself, and there will be a final fundraising event of selling raffle tickets starting next month. Also, February 10 and 11, Karen Green, which is our disciplinary faculty member, and a few students, including myself, will be going to Pittsfield, New Hampshire to observe Pittsfield Middle High School on the restorative justice system.
Nice.
Also, my final part is that semester 2 will be starting next week, and we'll have new classes such as board games class, where we learn about the different aspects of board games and perhaps making our own, mythology, science fiction books, science of extraterrestrial life, and the natural science of Vermont. So, new classes.
There's a t-shirt design contest for the upcoming Aspirations Day, which is a day where students get to learn about future potential career pathways. Last year, the design was done by the one and only Rainbow Shane. And the winning design this year will be used for the t-shirts handed out during Aspirations Day. The prom committee is planning to have a summer salad sale.
A summer what?
A summer salad sale.
Salad sale?
Wow,
Yeah.
alliteration.
Like
It's
hard to do with
Sorry,
it.
that was fast.
Yeah.
They're also planning other ideas, but they're keeping it under wraps, so everything's very secret. Yeah. As of right now, there are about 50 penguin plungers signed up for the penguin plunge. We lost our title of #1 to CBU, but we've raised, just now.
Just
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
What happened?
We
Just
lost
looking
our
at it.
CBU
#1
just hit us with $100
Refresh
over
the
us.
page.
Oh, I haven't donated yet.
we've raised just about 7,000.
How much?
Over 7,000.
We're just
Over
over
7,000.
7,200.
Nice.
Are you motivated to beat CVU?
You got the whole group.
I hope they're
aiming.
not
Not
watching us.
competitive at all.
No. I hope they're not watching.
I hope
No,
they
I hope
are.
they
So
are.
the
You're going
down.
You're going down.
I want to start wars.
Penguins will be on February 7th.
The penguins will plunge.
Yes. So
Spartans.
over to sports, where the JV and varsity boys have a game at Milton today at 5:30, and JV at 5:30 and varsity at 7, so it should be over. So far they have a record of 7-2, which is awesome.
Ooh,
And
nice.
the JV and varsity's varsity girls home game in Stowe today. Just ended today, soon. Right now they have varsity has a record of 6-2, so they just won the game today, so it's pretty sweet. Middle school boys has a game against Essex on the 15th. The A team plays at 3:30 and the B team plays at 4:30. The middle school girls have a game at South Hero on the 16th. The A team plays at 4 and B team plays at 5. That's it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, why isn't the penguin plunge on the website?
I just tweeted about it.
Did you?
I did.
But for people to sign up.
Going on Twitter.
So we're going to move down now and continue
maybe I
to
didn't.
8B. Now, mid-year board progress report. This was intended as an update on where we are as our goals go. I think, Sean, we're still, from a metric standpoint, we're still looking at March, April, and May for education for both new board members and existing or returning. Julian, I did meet with Jane, who was here Monday night.
Oh,
And I
great.
know you were either in transit or
I was.
so she's going to work out some. We had a great conversation about how do you talk about what we've got going on here. I think the feeling for both of us was that a lot of this communication is already taking place.
Yeah.
It's already changed. It's already moving.
Oh, good.
Don't necessarily recognize it.
Oh.
So she's going to summarize what we had talked about and send it back tomorrow or Friday.
Great.
And then we can start from there and take a peek at what we think we need to do. So I think our next mission, though, I think, is the budget flyer.
Mhm.
Make sure that we get the right information. But I think that's all part of that whole piece that we were trying to figure out how to work through.
Okay.
And the parent groups we talked about the last time, I think you're going to work with Sean as we come up forward here, so probably not a lot of updates since the
Right.
last time. Okay. We will then move down into the February meeting with the legislators. Last year, this was nice. This was the first time. This was okay, but I think we got a lot on the table this year. So I thought I was hoping we could have 10-minute discussion when we do have them come next month. Are you gonna work with Sandy to send the invite to
I
make sure
can.
that they are ready or
Yep.
available, or you want me to do that? It doesn't make any difference. Probably be better coming from me. I'll do it.
Okay.
So when they do come, I would like to have something. What I would like to do is get them a list of questions to prime the conversation, so they know what's on our mind. It's going to be pretty obvious part of what's on our mind. But if we get them a list of questions, get them started, then we'll let the discussion go wherever we want from there. So if there's anything that you know now, I would like to get that email out to them within the next couple of weeks.
Education, finance, school district consolidation.
Those are the ones.
Those are the big ones.
Okay, so maybe we just couch it as those are the two pieces that we're gonna be looking at, and then take the discussion where we.
And they're
Early.
that whole
It's early.
thing those two things are just linked. You know,
Yes.
I mean, this is all about that discussion.
And I would suggest going, there's been, in a couple of my reports, there's been some links to articles and things about, Shep Smith and that group and the work that they've been doing. And there's also, the first legislative update was in this month's report. The second one I just got, so it'll be in the February. So that will be the latest and greatest information on what's been happening. So it'd be good to read that before they come.
Yep. And I think it's imperative that they understand what it is that impacts us most. I mean, it's obvious. We think it's obvious because we feel it, live it, and see it every day. I just want to make sure that we're not assuming that it's that obvious to them. So we'll have
Could
that.
we get them a report on our, a copy of our consolidation study? I don't know if Clem has ever seen it, and Diana is brand new, so I'm almost sure she hasn't seen it. But, you know, at least they'll have some data.
It's out on the website somewhere, right?
I don't know if it's still on there or not. I'll find it.
You know, where we can say we've done a study and this is the position of the district that you represent.
Yeah.
I guess is my thoughts.
No, I think that's a great idea because it gives a foundation and a background and a history that they may not necessarily have with the depth that study went into. So. Okay. Yep. See if we can dig that up. Jay, do you know if you might have a soft copy of that?
Somewhere.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just get an invite out to them, basic topics, and hopefully I can get that study out at the same time. If any specific questions come up to you over the next couple of weeks, send them to me so that the last thing you want is to surprise somebody with a question on the spot. Some will come up, but all right. So that'll work. We'll have them in. And then recent community activities. Julian, I know you've been involved in the opiate piece. You got another meeting coming up at some point?
Yeah.
We were
actually.
before Christmas here, right? Just before Thanksgiving?
Yep. We had a great one before Thanksgiving, and then we're gonna have the next one on the 22nd of January.
Okay.
At 6 p.m.
And it's going to be right here.
And it'll be here.
Oh, here. Okay.
Yeah. A little bit different than last time.
All right. Good.
And I think a good thing to follow that up with too is that United Way, who's organizing the regional meetings around opiates, is going to do one in early March. So they were timing it with the local one, and it's going to be focused on what neighborhoods can do.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It'll be here?
And it will be here, and that'll be the regional meeting. We'll host it.
That will we get an alert of when that'll be?
They're still deciding the date.
Okay.
We've given them
Once we find
four dates, and so when we get all the details, we'll get it to you.
And when is yours?
22nd.
January 22.
Thursday, January 22nd. 6 p.m. JFK.
I think the thing that's impressed me about that thought process and is that it's not jumping into solutions that you don't know what the problem is defined as.
Yeah.
So I really, and it's a problem that we need to certainly look at, both locally and regionally.
Yeah.
Been involved with the mindfulness piece. They started last week. So for anybody listening, every Thursday, O'Brien Center, mindfulness exercise is kind of an interesting piece. The thing that impressed me the most is it's a group of folks that I haven't seen at all of the normal things that we do. It's a whole different set of faces.
Really?
So it's kind of nice.
There's about 20 folks there.
Was that you have kids?
Yeah.
Is it-
No, there were
Nope,
no kids there.
No kids. And it was just
Meeting new
Winooski,
neighbors, it was great.
different Winooski folks, and
Huh.
it's a different crew, so it was really
What,
nice.
is it every Thursday? What time?
6:30.
6:30 to 7:30. Yep.
Every Thursday. huh?
Mhm.
Yep. For
About
10
2
weeks.
At the O'Brien Center.
Nine more weeks,
Did
right?
you go? Yeah.
I haven't, but I just have one update.
Sure.
We are going to be offering childcare this week and moving forward on Thursday nights. That came up as a request, so.
So now childcare will be offered.
There you go. Bring the boys. Launch them into.
So much for mindfulness.
No, we can do it while they're around. That's the true test.
All right. So next time we definitely have the legislators and our normal agenda. Any other topics for the meeting that you guys can?
Was this whole crowd that was here today? That was all at the behest of the organization that Infinite and Meg were working for?
So it's so Infinite and Meg are part of partnership. They're called Parents for Change, and so they're focused on the PICO model of community organizing. And I had heard it in a couple of places. They had heard it, so we talked and said, "What's the best way to move forward?" So I wrote the newsletter article and prompted people to contact. And I got very little contact this way, but then I worked with Meg and Infinite, and they came in here and started doing interviews with parents and students. And so that's how they organized that whole group, understanding that this is a process that has to play itself out, and that there needs to be a set of community members, particularly parents, who are willing to put some time and effort and work with Meg, Infinite, and a member or members of the school to look at all the possibilities of this. That it's not just a school issue, it's a community issue. What are the other resources that we have available to us, and come up with some options that we can talk about as a community and move forward.
Okay. And
so
do we take up, as our board process, do we talk about whatever was brought up in the public participation part the following month? Is that how we do it?
I'm taking out of what's coming from this is that there's a study being done that's coming out in April at some point. I'm taking out of this that we're going to at least look at that study when it does come out and see what and if there's anything that where things are pertinent with us. I'm not sure where that might work with the city. There may be a consolidated effort, but I don't know. And have a discussion about where do we go from here at that point.
Yeah.
If they're already doing a study, there's no sense in going out and doing a study.
Right, well, I think that that's what's so great is
So,
it's parent-led.
It
Parent
is.
leadership and getting all the pieces of information together so we can really see what do we have, what do we don't have, where are the gaps, and what are the partners within that to help fill those gaps.
Yeah, and being done out of a UVM group, I'm assuming this is some graduate level work that
That's what
somebody's
I'd like
doing.
to know. I mean, he said Glenn McRae was going to look at it with a class. I mean, that doesn't,
Right.
I don't know what that means. Like, I could look at stuff at a class, and I wouldn't really be comfortable presenting it at the board. You know what I mean?
Okay, I had assumed that there was some kind of an output that was.
There may be. He said there would be, but I don't. I'd be curious to know. I mean, we could invite Glenn down here.
My understanding of the output is that Meg and Infinite are going to continue with this group. They're going to facilitate probably a smaller committee that'll have membership from the city, from the school, parents, community. They'll try and get some folks from CCTA, from probably somebody from UVM. And they're going to start, I gave them all the CCT information, the mountain transit and contact information that we have. I gave them all the data around where our kids live in the city and distances from the school.
Right.
And said to them, we need you to do the work.
Right.
And to come up with the options. And there needs to be, like more than one and less than 7 options that could be brought back and be looked at, I think, both at the school board and the city council level, and then the discussion begins about if we can do something. So I would expect at least a communication back in the spring sometime, probably a progress report, probably not options yet.
Yeah.
I would suspect that might come in the fall.
Okay. In time for budget season for the next year?
Well, yeah, that's what you want to make sure is you don't miss that cycle too badly.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for the agenda for next time? Upcoming meetings and items: Martin Luther King Day, school closed. JFK concert on the 29th of January, and then our next regular board meeting on the 11th.
And I would just like to, before you adjourn and head out, in all the excitement at the beginning, I forgot to introduce our new board recorder, Brenda Steady, who is here with us. Welcome.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Brenda, thanks for doing it.
Thank you. I like it.
And Brenda Brenda's a Milton resident and has a lot of experience with boards. Currently a member of the select board there, and has I think also was on the school board there.
9
at some
years.
point. Yep.
9 years.
So,
yeah, well done.
Loves boards so much. Here she is.
Here I am.
We're happy to have her. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can I ask one more question? Ray, aren't there some activities for Martin Luther King Day in the
There are,
city?
yeah. So Ethan Hausman and the youth programs team down at the O'Reilly Center are organizing a bunch of events for students through 4th through 12th grade on Monday.
Nice.
I believe they're starting 10 o'clock. Don't quote me on that, but there was
Okay.
just a post on Front Porch Forum yesterday.
Oh, perfect.
As of now, we have 40 kids signed up,
Nice.
which is
Wow.
great, but we would love to have more. So
Okay, so you can look, so it's on for forum.
So,
Would
yeah.
what is it on the y'all's website also?
I don't know if it was on there as of this morning, but if it is not, it will be by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So check the city's website, winooski.org, and get some posted there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Yay.
Cool.
If anyone hasn't seen it, go see Selma.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I move we adjourn.
All right. Have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
And who did?